Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Beginning in at least the 1960s, the United Kingdom gained a reputation worldwide for football hooliganism. The phenomenon was often dubbed the British or English disease. However, since the 1980s and well into the 1990s, the UK government has led a wide-scale crackdown on football-related violence. While football hooliganism has always been a growing concern in some continental European countries in the recent years, British football fans now tend to have a better reputation abroad. Although reports of British football hooliganism still surface, the instances now tend to occur at pre-arranged locations rather than the matches themselves. Football hooliganism dates back all the way to the Middle Ages in England. Fights between groups of youths often occurred during football matches organised between neighbouring towns and villages on Shrove Tuesday and other holy days. The local merchants were concerned over the effect of such disturbance on trade and called for the control of football as early as the 14th century. King Edward II had banned football in 1314, and then King Edward III had banned it again in 1349, because he felt the disorder and violence that accompanied the matches had led to civil unrest and distracted his subjects. A number of other monarchs and various other authorities also tried to ban football throughout the centuries in England and Scotland, but they were largely ineffective. Hooliganism in the modern game of football in England dates back to the establishment in the 19th century. Individuals who were referred to as roughs were known to cause trouble at football matches in the 1880s. For example, when they attacked the visiting team in the match between Aston Villa and Preston North End in 1885. Local derby matches would usually have the worst trouble in an era where fans did not often travel to other towns and cities, and roughs sometimes attacked the referees and visiting team players. Incidences of fan violence have been reported from the late 19th century into the early 20th century in England and Scotland. In 1909, thousands of Rangers and Celtic fans rioted at the replay of the Scottish Cup final at Hampden Park. Crowd troubles also extended to the areas outside the ground, into the town as well as the trains and the railway stations. For example, Leicester City fans vandalised the train in 1934, and several trains were damaged in 1955 and 1956 by Liverpool and Everton fans. John Moynihan in The Soccer Syndrome describes a stroll around the touchline of an empty Goodison Park, the Everton home stadium, on a summer's day in the 1960s. Walking behind the infamous goal, where they built a barrier to stop objects crushing into visiting goalkeepers, there was a strange feeling of hostility remaining, as if the regulars had never left. The News of the World's Bob Pennington spoke of the lunatic fringe of support that fastens onto them, meaning Everton, seeking identification in multinational port where the roots are hard to establish. The same newspaper later described Everton supporters as the roughest, rowdiest rabble who watches British soccer. Incidences of disorderly behaviour by fans gradually increased before they reached a peak in the 1970s and the 1980s. Between 1946 and 1960, there were on average 13 incidents reported per season, but between 1961 and 1968, the number had increased to 25 per season. Hooliganism in the modern age has been attributed by some sociologists to the decline of the British Empire. Many organised hooligan firms had emerged in the 1970s, associating themselves with the clubs, such as Arsenal, who had The Herd, Aston Villa had Villa Hardcore, Birmingham City had the Zulu Warriors. Blackpool had the Muckers. Burnley had the Suicide Squad. Derby County had the Derby Lunatic Fringe. Cardiff City had the Soul Crew. Charlton Athletic had the B-Mob. Chelsea had the Chelsea Headhunters. Everton had the County Road Cutters. Hull City had the Hull City Psychos. Leeds United had the Leeds Service Crew. Middlesbrough had the Middlesbrough Frontline. Millwall had the Millwall Bushwhackers. Newcastle United had the Gremlins. Nottingham Forest had the Forest Executive Crew. Manchester United had the Red Army. Portsmouth had the 657 Crew. Queen's Park Rangers had the Bush Babies. Tottenham Hotspur had the Yid Army. Sheffield United had the Blades Business Crew. Shrewsbury Town had the English Border Front. Stoke City had Naughty 40. Sunderland AFC had the Voxies and the Seaburn Casuals. West Ham United had the Intercity Firm, and Wolverhampton Wanderers had the Subway Army. In 1974, when Manchester United were relegated to the second division, the Red Army hooligan firm caused absolute mayhem at the grounds up and down the country. And in the same year, a Bolton Wanderers fan stabbed a young Blackpool fan to death behind the Kop at Bloomfield Road during the second division match. These two events led to the introduction of crowd segregation and the erection of fences at football grounds in England. A bad-tempered FA Cup quarter-final tie between Newcastle United and Nottingham Forest on the 9th of March 1974 was halted mid-match when hundreds of fans invaded the pitch, one whom attacked Nottingham Forest midfielder Dave Sorella. The so-called relegation battle, when Tottenham Hotspur and Chelsea fans fought on the pitch before Spurs relegated Chelsea in the return fixture in 1975, made national news when shown on the BBC television programme John Craven's News Round. Leeds United were banned from Europe soon after, when their fans rioted after the 1975 European Cup final against Bayern Munich in Paris. Manchester United were banned in 1977 after rioting before, during and after their UEFA Cup game with Saint Etienne, also in France. In March 1978, a full-scale riot broke out at the Den during an FA Cup quarter-final match between Millwall and Ipswich Town. Fighting began on the terraces and spilled out onto the pitch and into the narrow streets around the ground. Dozens of people were injured. During the 1970s, black footballers became an increasingly frequent presence in English football, mostly born to Afro-Caribbean immigrants who had settled in Britain from 1948. With racial tension high in many parts of Britain and the far-right National Front peaking in popularity at the same time, many of these players were subjected to regular racial abuse from the fans of the rival teams, whose fans often pelted them with banana skins, as well as making monkey noises or shouting racist obscenities. Perhaps the most notable player to suffer this type of racial abuse during the 1970s was Viv Anderson, the Nottingham Forest fullback who became England's first black senior international player in 1978. Black players became an increasingly frequent feature in the English game during the 1980s, and with hooliganism still widespread, incidents of racial abuse continued on large scale. John Barnes, who made his Football League debut for Watford in 1981, was soon targeted with racial abuse by rival fans, which continued after he joined Liverpool in 1987, soon after which he suffered severe racial abuse. In 1984, not long after breaking into the England national football team, Mr. Barnes was racially abused during a friendly match in Brazil by a section of England supporters identifying themselves as supporters or members of the National Front. The intercity firm, like the subgroups from other clubs, specialised in infiltrating the terraces reserved at games for rival fans. Its members wore no club colours and would carry apparently inoffensive weapons like umbrellas or hardened hats, their anonymity by avoiding official supporters' transport. Once the game had started, they lay into their rival fans, causing havoc, and would melt away into the crowd. During the 1980s, clubs which had rarely experienced hooliganism feared hooliganism coming to their towns, with Swansea City supporters anticipating violence after their promotion to the Football League First Division in 1981, at a time when most of the clubs most notorious for hooliganism were playing in the First Division. While those living in Milton Keynes were concerned when Luton Town announced plans to relocate to the town, although this relocation ultimately never happened. On the 1st of May 1982, after a London derby between Arsenal and West Ham United, a supporter was killed in a riot between fans of the two teams. On the 5th of January 1985, an FA Cup third round tie between Burton Albion and Leicester City, after the Albion goalkeeper, Paul Evans, was wounded by a block of wood thrown from the city end of the neutral baseball ground. On the 13th of March 1985, Millwall supporters were responsible for large-scale rioting in Luton when Millwall played Luton Town in the quarter-final of the FA Cup, although a number of Luton fans were also involved in the violence. In response, the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher, had her government set up a war cabinet to combat football hooliganism in the UK. This was the first of several high-profile incidents of hooliganism in 1985. Certainly, it has been a long time since the followers of the Scottish national team or Scotland's great club sides have caused the sickening mayhem which England fans have produced in Belgium, France, Luxembourg, Spain and Switzerland in the past couple of years. English fans have become regarded in continental football circles as by far the worst in Europe, if not the world. On the 11th of May 1985, the same day as Bradford City's stadium fire, a 14-year-old boy died at St Andrew's Stadium when fans were pushed by police onto a wall which subsequently collapsed following crowd violence at a match between Birmingham City and Leeds United. The fighting that day was described by Justice Popplewell during the Popplewell Committee investigation into football in 1985 as more like the Battle of Anningcourt than a football match. Because of the other events in 1986 and the growing rise of football hooliganism during the 1980s, an interim report from the committee stated that football may not be able to continue in its present form for much longer, unless hooliganism was reduced, perhaps by excluding away fans. On the 29th of May 1985, 39 Juventus fans were crushed to death during a European Cup final between Liverpool and Juventus at the Hazel Stadium in Brussels, an event that became known as the Hazel Stadium disaster. Just before kick-off, the Liverpool fans had broke through a line of police officers and ran towards the opposing supporters in a section of the ground which had contained the Italian fans. Many of the fans tried to escape the fighting and a wall collapsed on them. As a result of the Hazel Stadium disaster, English clubs were banned from all European football competitions until 1990, with Liverpool banned for an additional year. On the 8th of August 1986, rival gangs of Manchester United and West Ham United hooligans were involved in violence on a Sea Link ferry bound for the Hook of Holland. 8 football hooligans, all either Manchester United or West Ham supporters, received prison sentences totaling 51 years, 16 months later. Another incident was soon forthcoming. On the 20th of September 1986, Leeds United hooligans overturned and immolated a fish and chip van in Ostell Stadium, the temporary home of Bradford City, following the fire at Valley Parade the previous year. On August 15, 1987, thousands of Wolverhampton Wanderers supporters invaded the seaside town of Scarborough for their opening game of the division. 56 people were arrested and thousands of pounds worth of damage was caused in some of the worst violence the town has ever seen. Millwall hooligans were involved in their third highest profile incident of the decade on the 9th of January 1988, when in an FA Cup tie between Arsenal and Highbury, 41 people were arrested for rioting after the herd and the Millwall bushwhackers clashed. Football hooliganism has also featured prominently with relation to the Hillsborough disaster, with barristers representing the officers policing the ground, where 96 people died, saying they had a duty to prevent hooliganism and unruly behaviour from the Liverpool supporters, following the Hazel Stadium disaster. The UEFA president, Jacques Georges, caused controversy by describing the Liverpool supporters as beasts, suggesting that hooliganism was the cause of the Hillsborough disaster. His remarks led to Liverpool FC calling for his resignation. Many newspapers also reported that football hooliganism was a major factor in the tragedy, most notably The Sun, whose article entitled The Truth sparked a sharp fall in sales on the tabloid of Merseyside, with many agents refusing to stock it. However, in 2016, an inquest found that the 96 victims were unlawfully killed due to the failings by police and the ambulance services. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher made a high-profile public call during 1985 for the country's football hooligans to be given stiff prison sentences to act as a deterrent to the others in a bid to clamp down on hooliganism. Her Minister for Sport, Colin Moynihan, attempted to bring an ID card scheme for football supporters. This scheme was set out in Part 1 of the Football Spectators Act in 1989. However, it was never implemented following criticism by the Taylor Report following the Hillsborough disaster. Documents released in 2014 revealed that the Conservative government of the 1980s crafted a number of schemes to combat hooliganism. This included an initiative to be titled Goalies Against Hooligans, consisting of getting more articulate goalkeepers, who are often first in the line of hooligan fire, to speak out against the violence. Racial abuse of black players was a common feature of hooliganism during the 1970s and even more so in the 1980s, when they were first prominent in the English leagues. Before the 1970s, only a small number of black players had ever played in English football, but the arrival of the common Welsh immigrants from Britain from 1948 saw many black players born in Britain to Afro-Caribbean parents breaking onto the scene a generation later. The first wave of black players mostly appeared for clubs who were based in areas which now have significant black communities, including Birmingham, Luton, Nottingham and West Bromwich. John Barnes, capped 79 times for England, was first racially abused by rival fans from Luton Town when he began his professional career at Watford in the early 1980s, regularly being targeted with racist chants and having banana skins hurled at him during the match. Soon after his transfer to Liverpool in 1987, Mr. Barnes was racially abused by Everton fans in the Merseyside derby. The Everton chairman at the time, Philip Carter, then denounced the racist Everton fans as scum. Mr. Barnes was only the second black player to appear for Liverpool, the first being Howard Gale, who had played a few games for the club at the beginning of the 1980s, while Everton still had yet to put their first black player on the field at this stage. Also in the 1980s, Paul Canaville became Chelsea's first black football player, as well as being racially abused by the fans of rival clubs. He was even abused by some of his own team fans, who had a reputation for being some of the worst hooligans in the English game at the time. Viv Anderson, who had become England's first black full international in 1978, was also subjected to regular racist abuse during the 1980s when playing for Nottingham Forest and later in Arsenal.
Millions of pounds have been spent on the fight against football hooliganism. But whether it's at home or abroad, London's hooligan fans fight on. The rioting that took place at last week's Spurs game against the Dutch team Feyenoord brought renewed calls for something more to be done to tackle football hooliganism. 40 fans went to hospital in Rotterdam, many with serious stab wounds. Before the match, Spurs fans had smashed up 2 cross-channel ferries and rampaged through the town. But this was only the latest in a series of incidents this season involving London fans. They've shown that despite all efforts to stamp it out, football hooliganism is still alive and kicking. In September at Brighton, hundreds of Chelsea fans invade the pitch. The fighting that follows leaves 4 policemen in hospital, 14 fans arrested, and this Chelsea fan in prison for 6 months. And in October, football hooliganism claims its 6th fatality in 10 years, when a 20-year-old Chelsea fan dies in hospital after being beaten up by rival fans following his team's game at Huddersfield. Coming to terms with football hooliganism has been a problem that's been exercising the minds of the public at large, the football authorities and successive governments for the past 20 years. But they still haven't managed to solve the problem. Despite all the attempts to stop him, the football hooligan just refuses to give up causing trouble at matches. To most people, the behaviour of football hooligans seems repugnant and mindless, but nevertheless, it makes sense to them. And understanding why this is provides the best chance of assessing what steps might be taken to solve the problem. Paul is a loyal Chelsea supporter who's often been involved in fighting at matches. Every Saturday for the last 13 years, he's travelled from his home on a council estate near Weybridge to watch Chelsea play football. When they're at home, like hundreds of other Chelsea fans, he meets his mates before the game for a drink in one of the several pubs around the ground. In the years he's been coming to Chelsea, he's seen them win the FA Cup and then be relegated twice to the 2nd Division. Yet his support for the club has never faltered.
This is what it's all about. You're making phone calls all the week. Where are you going Saturday? How are you getting there? To me, it's what all I've got in life. I mean, I've got a nice girlfriend, I've had nice girlfriends and I've lost them through football, through going to watch football. But really, that's all I've got. I've got a nice home and everything, and parents and everything. But that's all I want, is football.
Paul's devotion to Chelsea is so great that the fights he's been involved in with rival fans has meant him being fined many hundreds of pounds. He doesn't go looking for fights, but like many Chelsea fans, he won't run away from one either.
If Chelsea was to run from a certain game, before you know it, it's all around London. Oh, you run from so-and-so. Well, it's not, is it? Then we go to a game, then we get slagged down for running at, say, somewhere like Cambridge or something, which to other teams is ridiculous.
But Chelsea has other fans who, unlike Paul, don't need to be provoked before they'll fight. After a few drinks, Ralph is one of them.
I mean, we have got him nuts at Chelsea, haven't we, you know? I mean, I suppose I could say on one when once I've had a lot to drink and everything, like, you know? And I'll go there and I'll get involved. And I do go a bit nutty, like, you know? I'll go a bit over the top than what I normally would do. And, you know, we've got a few people like that at Chelsea that are just crazy, you know? They just sort of go in. To them, it's nothing, really. They ain't bothered. And, you know, they just run in, fist and feet flying everywhere. and that's it, you know.
Whatever their differences in approach, a minority of Chelsea fans like Ralph and Paul fight for one reason: to defend their team's reputation against any team that threatens it. But Chelsea isn't the only London team with fans who've got a reputation for fighting. In the First Division there's Arsenal, Tottenham Hotspur and West Ham, and in the Third Division Millwall. These reputations have been built up over a number of years and have hardened into bitter rivalries, not only between London clubs, but between clubs from outside London too. They're teams like Portsmouth, Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds United, Manchester United and Newcastle United. Learning why the fans feel they need to fight for their club's reputation is a key to understanding their behaviour. This is the belief of sociologist John Williams. He's made a special study of football hooligans and has travelled all over Britain and Europe with them.
The kinds of working class community that we've been looking at is what one might describe as a lower working class council estate. These seem to be communities characterised by territoriality, defence of the home turf, a stress on masculinity, being able to look after oneself, being able to fight. It's also the case that a lot of the authorities and people who comment on hooliganism seem to think that it's meaningless. They don't see that a lot of the lads who get involved in fighting at football matches actually view the actions of opposing supporters as, in some sense, a violation of their territory. And of course, on Saturdays, the home territory is not simply the local street or the local estate, the local neighbourhood. Can be the entire city. The bus stations, the railway stations, the football terraces, especially the home end.
Many football fans then see the home end as the supreme symbol of their territory, which for the hooligan element amongst them has to be defended against rival fans at all costs. And how these fans defend that territory is crucial to how they get their reputation.
Well, the point is you've got to go in there because they're going to try and take your reputation away from you, aren't they? I mean, they're there to have a go at you, you know? They think, right, they're Chelsea, they've got your reputation, let's have a pop at them, see what we can do.
But at Chelsea's ground, fans like Ralph very rarely get the opportunity to defend Chelsea's reputation. The police are well organised and keep both sets of fans away from each other. So at home games like today's against Cardiff, all the police have to worry about is the odd fan who decides to have a go. And they soon move in to stop incidents like this developing into something worse. Hooligan fans know they just won't get a fight at a home game, whether it's against Cardiff or any other team. Increasingly, it's something that people like Ralph have come to realise.
You can't get no violence at Chelsea now because the police are so organised really well that they just blank it straight out, like, you know.
Chelsea Football Club, in fact, have developed very sophisticated methods for controlling the fans here at Stamford Bridge. They've installed video cameras to watch the crowd and pick out ringleaders. They've got procedures which keep the rival groups of fans well apart. In fact, the club has been so successful in containing hooliganism at home that when there is trouble at Stamford Bridge, it's now mainly restricted to obscene or racist chants. Unfortunately, Chelsea would not let the London programme film inside the ground to show how their control methods work. However, Tottenham Hotspur did allow our cameras in. They allowed us to film at their recent game against Notts County to show how they've coped with the problem. In common with many London clubs, at White Hart Lane, Tottenham tried to make sure that the visiting Notts County fans are separated from the home supporters by making them use one special entrance. Once in the ground, they're segregated from the home fans by a series of steel pens. Steel pens like these have been developed mainly in response to a rash of bad football riots in the mid-70s, which brought in new legislation to make crowd control much easier. Throughout the match, the police keep an eye out for troublemakers, quickly ejecting those that come to their notice. And just to make sure there's no trouble when fans leave the ground after the game, police throw a cordon around the Notts County fans to keep them apart from the Spurs supporters. Only when the streets are clear will the visitors be allowed to set off home. On most Saturdays, the police are active at the London railway stations as well as at the football grounds. On busy days, up to 50,000 fans use London's mainline stations and underground system on their way to or from matches. But again, a watchful and discreet police presence is on hand to head off any trouble. Segregating football fans before, during and after matches is the keystone of the strategy that's been developed for dealing with football hooliganism in London. It's a strategy that's aimed at preventing trouble before it starts, and the police feel they've got it just about right.
It's been very successful in London. Look, particularly over the past few years, we've recognised the fact that problems not only exist at the grounds and the immediate locality of the grounds. We now work out how supporters are getting to London in the first place. What times they're likely to arrive. Are they likely to spend any time in the West End of London before or after the match? And we coordinate our policing, particularly on Saturdays, to take all of this into account.
In fact, the police and the London clubs have become so experienced that they've got hooliganism in the capital in a stranglehold. But fans from London clubs are still heavily involved in hooliganism. Their problem is that they can no longer defend their club's reputation and territory at home. And so the problem has moved on, literally, to the London club's away matches. At away games, fans like Ralph can once again take the field and show that the Chelsea supporters haven't gone soft.
You know who's going to go in the away supporters' end. And that's it, you go in there, you keep your mouth shut until they start singing and giving it the verbal and all that, and then you just go into them, just let them have the lot, like, you know, just run in, shout out Chelsea, let them know who you are, give them an hiding or a battering or whatever, police come in, throw you out, and that's it, it's all over. In other words, we've done them, we've took their end, like, you know, that's it, we've achieved the main thing, haven't we? We've took their end. They haven't took us, have they?
Why is that the main thing?
Well, it is, and it's got to be, because otherwise they're going to take you. I mean, you're going to lose all your respect. If you don't, with the reputation, see, if you don't go to the ground and take their end, people are going to think, well, what's going on with Chelsea these days, you know? What have they done so far? Nothing, really. And you're going to lose all your respect. Then people are going to start dropping out then, and you don't want that, because you're going to get clubs come down and think, right, we can do this, we can do that, we can have a go at Chelsea now.
But football hooligans aren't able to cause trouble at every away game. When Spurs fans infiltrated the Birmingham end last month, the police soon threw them out. Clubs in cities like Birmingham are just as well policed and organised as they are in London. But not all clubs are in the big cities or in the First Division. For this reason, some club managers like Malcolm MacDonald of Fulham believe that it's the smaller provincial clubs in the Second Division that are now the most vulnerable to travelling hooligans.
It's basically that the police, because they are not au fait with hordes of football supporters, that they can cause as much of a problem as can the supporters themselves. Because I think that supporters might, if they sense a bit of an inexperience, because remember, these football supporters are as experienced in going to football matches as the London and Birmingham police are. And they smell when, say, the Shrewsbury police are inexperienced. And so they take liberties.
It's not only the policing at these provincial grounds that's at fault. Many of the smaller second division clubs are simply not prepared for teams with a large following away from home.
Chelsea, for example, have the third largest away support in the country after Manchester United and Liverpool. And it is a fact that they are apt to ring up a club secretary 3 weeks in advance and say, look, we've got 5,000 supporters coming to your club on such and such a date, what are you going to do about it? And their opponents simply refuse to believe it. They make polite noises, put the phone down, so that suddenly that town on that particular day has 5,000 Chelsea supporters descending upon it. And there is immediate threatening situation because not enough provision has been made for them.
I mean, look what happened at Brighton. The police was well unorganised at Brighton. That's why it all happened, like, all the trouble that went on, like. But, I mean, we had about 15,000 fans there at Brighton. And most of them were there Friday afternoon or Friday evening. And the police was so unorganised, it was unreal. There just wasn't enough police officers to cope with the trouble.
If the away games are the best hunting grounds in Britain for London's hooligans, there are even better opportunities for disorder in Europe. Indeed, for the violent supporters, Europe is ideal. It offers big grounds, few restrictions and innocent police forces. The European matches are the hooligans' super away games. For them, last week's Spurs match against Feyenoord in Rotterdam was paradise. It was a match where reputations were at stake. 9 long years ago, Spurs were beaten in a crucial European game by Feyenoord, a match disfigured by vicious fighting on the terraces. Knowing what happened then, Tottenham Football Club had warned the Dutch of trouble to come and pleaded for no tickets to be sold on the day of the game. While Tottenham Football Club itself cannot be blamed for what happened last week, its London fans took every advantage of slack Dutch policing. According to West Ham supporter Kaz Pennant, this is a pattern in Europe that looks likely to continue. Pennant has just spent a year in prison for stabbing a Sheffield fan, although he's always maintained his innocence. In the late 70s, he was a member of the Intercity firm, a feared and notorious gang of West Ham hooligans. He and a local journalist have just finished a book about the Intercity firm.
So where it's all happening there is, they know like they're losing the battle at home in England, right? But abroad, right, that's where the party is now, right? Abroad they ain't got together, still not used to handling mobs, especially the English, right? And they go out there, they ain't got the English old bill, right? And they're in the field day because they're not used to like, you know, the English supporters' tactics, their ways, and they're just not ready for them.
International matches abroad are just another example of this away game syndrome. When England played Switzerland in 1981 in a World Cup qualifier, hundreds of English supporters ran riot through the stadium, while the Swiss police looked on helplessly. And in Copenhagen last year, a smoke bomb was the prelude to an afternoon of violence when England played Denmark. The police had no effective control procedures against mobs of English fans who fought with the Dutch fans on the terraces. Even plainclothes policemen like this one in the grey sweater were reduced to lashing out in desperation. The whole pattern of violence at away games has been brought about in part by the way the problem has been traditionally dealt with. John Williams believes it's simply been displaced from one place to another.
As the football authorities began to try and control the phenomenon inside football grounds, all they really succeeded in doing was displacing it. So as more pens, more fences were erected in grounds, then the trouble moved outside. As more police moved outside, then the trouble moved to service stations, to railway stations, to the streets, to the city centre. As more police got on the streets earlier, then football fans started to arrive earlier. And it's been consistently displaced in that form. And you might argue that as controls have been increasingly applied in the domestic context, then to an extent the problem has been displaced abroad. So we have in the mid-1970s, early 1980s, incidents of English fans being involved in various kinds of hooliganism and vandalism at matches abroad, both with their club sides and with the England national side.
Hooliganism was displaced out of the grounds and onto the football specials in the mid-70s. But when troublesome fans were banned from the specials, they simply travelled on ordinary trains, helped by 1 or 2 windfalls.
You know, I mean, like a couple hundred, like West Ham's top boys were using it in the city, and like now it was the cream, and now it was getting all the rows and everything. But when it went nationwide out West Ham was when Purcell come out. They started introducing free tickets or cheap tickets for the intercity trains while collecting Purcell tickets and things like that. Well now, like, you know, I mean, everyone could afford to use the intercity. When the student railway card, Jimmy Savile's student railway card, that was a godsend, you know what I mean? £10, like, half price in the city travel all the year round, and it covered the football season.
For a tiny minority of hooligans, more sophisticated methods of control will only result in more elaborate methods to avoid detection, displacing the problem once more.
Well, like, it's got to be organised, like, to continue. Like, how do you think it survived? You know what I mean? Like, every season they say they're going to stop football hooligans and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And every season the same thing happens. Like, they just use different tactics to get around things.
But the football authorities have no answer to the problem of hooliganism simply being displaced from one area to another. Their methods are still only to clamp down further. To combat the hooligans, there are 2 main lines of attack. The first is to get crowd control at more small clubs, tightened up to London standards. Richard Faulkner is secretary of the Football Trust, which finances new schemes to combat hooliganism. He knows what can be done.
Stoke City have got a system of television operating outside the ground, so they can control the movement of fans from railway stations and coach parks to the turnstiles. This is operated by the local police force. Other clubs are looking at identity card systems, like Derby County. In the case of Watford, they've had a particularly imaginative scheme, which we as a trust were able to assist with, and they have built a new railway station on a line which isn't normally used on a Saturday, which has the effect of taking the visiting supporters away from the town centre on match days.
But despite schemes like Watford's, many small clubs still have a long way to go.
In some of the rural areas where you've got smaller clubs which have come up from the 3rd or the 4th division and are finding themselves playing against opposition which have large away followings and sometimes largely troublesome away followings, the task of safety inside the grounds is much more difficult.
But if the authorities tighten up on the smaller clubs, the hooligans will be denied their outlet at away games in Britain. Then the pressure on European games will get even stronger. So the authorities' second line of attack to combat the hooligans is to get the European clubs to tighten up. Sports Minister Neil McFarlane is already very worried about next Wednesday's England v Luxembourg match. He has urged the Luxembourg authorities not to sell tickets on the day. Others want to go further. Chris Navrat is a football writer working for the Sunday Times.
The European authorities have spent a year looking at the problem of hooliganism because it's not confined just to Britain. And the European sports ministers have come up with a plan which may or may not be accepted, which is that people who go abroad and commit offences will, instead of being immediately deported back to their own country, tried in that country, even if convicted, jailed or whatever in that country. And the belief is that that would deter hooligans. People would be so worried about spending a year or 6 months in jail in a foreign country that that would, in their mind, prevent them from running riot.
If the European sports minister's plan is accepted, it could well be that football hooliganism in Europe will then be reduced as well as in this country. But the question then is, where will the hooligans go? Some observers and fans believe the process of moving the problem on might even result in moving it right out of the football grounds, but it still won't get rid of the hardcore hooligans.
It would be very difficult to conceive of a way that one could get rid of hooliganism using the kinds of means the authorities have been using in recent years. I don't think one is ever going to completely eradicate hooliganism via penning, segregation, policing, and so on. You can reduce the problem to manageable proportions in that way. You might even succeed in displacing the problem away from the football ground. So, as far as the football authority is concerned, they might be satisfied with a situation in which at least hooliganism wasn't occurring within the ground, spilling onto the field and stopping matches. But of course, you won't change the values and attitudes of lads who are involved in hooliganism by doing these kinds of things.
You know, they say they're going to close grounds down, like, you know, say we will play the match without any supporters, like, you know. But what is that? That's nothing, is it? I mean, doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. You're still going to get fighting out in the streets and things like that, you know. Even if it's not at the football, you're still going to get with rival supporters clashing in pubs, and like discos and things like that. I mean, like, you go to a disco, you get a group of Tottenham, you get a group of Chelsea. You're not just going to stand there and talk to each other, are you? I mean, halfway through the night, when you've all had a good drink up, it's obviously there's going to be a big row. So it'll never stop. No matter what they try to do, you won't stop it.
It's quite possible then that a really effective clampdown by the football authorities of Britain and Europe could lead to hooliganism breaking out somewhere else. As we've seen, the problem has only been moved on, and the hooligans are driven by some very basic motives. So where could the hooliganism burst out next if it's denied an outlet at football? Could it be in the high street or the local disco? Some people are convinced that for all its horrors, hooliganism is best left where it is now.
The question I always ask people when they talk about football hooliganism and football violence is, well, if we were to ban professional football as of now from this country, would that eradicate football violence and football hooliganism? And I'm sure it wouldn't. And I think that the view that must be taken is that football, in a peculiar way, is doing society a favour by at least magnetising that hooligan element into the football grounds, which are well policed, have had vast fortunes which are spent on for safety reasons, and at least it's controllable to the people that are within the stadiums. Now imagine if there were no football and that this hooligan element, this violent element in our society weren't just a group for a Saturday afternoon at a football stadium.
By the 1990s, the hooliganism problem in English football had reduced to the extent that UEFA lifted its ban on English clubs in European competitions. In 1994, a few days before Sunderland AFC's versus Nottingham Forest game, police snatched a pile of weapons and drugs worth thousands of pounds from Seaburn Casuals, which was a firm from Sunderland. They were preparing for a showdown with the Nottingham Hooligans. A riot on the 15th of February 1995 during an aborted England vs Ireland friendly at Lansdowne Road in Dublin resulted in 20 injuries and 40 arrests. When the English equaliser was disallowed, English fans in the upper tier threw items onto the lower tier, ripped up seats and benches, and fought the Garda riot police. After England's defeat to Germany in the Euros 96 semi-finals, a large-scale riot broke out in Trafalgar Square, with a number of injuries, and a Russian youth was stabbed in Brighton after his attackers mistook him for a German. However, by 1997, it was said by Reuters that the English game had virtually rid itself of the hooligan scourge. Before the 1998 FIFA World Cup, 26 hooligans from Seaburn Casuals, a Sunderland AFC firm, after a military issue smoke bomb at a local pub after a fight with the bouncers. By the end of the operation, over 60 were facing charges. Some of the Seaburn Casual hooligans picked up in the raid were also involved with neo-Nazi groups like Combat 18. The operation failed when a judge ruled the CCTV footage from the pub inadmissible. France 98 was marred by violence as English fans clashed with the North African locals of Marseille, leading up to 100 fans being arrested. At the end of 1999 and the 2000 season, Sunderland topped the hooliganism table in the Premier League with 223 fans arrested that season. By the end of 2002 and the 2003 season, Sunderland topped the football arrest table with 154 arrests. According to Colin Blaney, in Hot Shot, the story of a little red devil, many of the Manchester United hooligans turned to serious crime during this period. He states that roughly half of the team's hooligans became involved in selling Class A drugs, partly because of the wave of drugs that came in the early 1990s rave culture, a scene that football hooligans were at the centre of. In the 2000s, English football hooligans often adopted clothing styles associated with casual subculture, such as items made by Shark, Burberry and Stone Island. Prada and Burberry withdrew some garments over fears that their brands were becoming linked to hooliganism. The England team was threatened with being withdrawn from the Euro 2000 because of the poor behaviour of the fans. In March 2002, the Seaburn Casuals, the Sunderland AFC firm, fought with the hooligans from the Newcastle Gremlins in a pre-arranged clash near North Shields ferry terminal, in what was described as some of the worst football-related fighting violence ever witnessed in the United Kingdom. The leaders of the Gremlins and the Casuals were both jailed for 4 years for conspiracy, with 28 others jailed for various terms, based on evidence gained after police examined the messages sent by mobile phones between the gang members on the day. By the end of the 2002-2003 season, Sunderland topped the football arrest table with 154 arrests. The England reputation improved as a result of good behaviour at the 2002 FIFA World Cup and the 2004 UEFA European Football Championship, despite reports of the arrest of 33 England supporters at the latter tournament. The 2000s saw several death threats. Peter Ridsdale was a target of death threats from Leeds United fans. Swedish referee Anders Frisk quit his position after receiving death threats from Chelsea fans. Reading players Ibrahima Sonko and Stephen Hunt also received death threats from Chelsea fans in 2006. Fernando Torres received death threats from Liverpool fans. Sol Campbell received death threats from Tottenham fans. A steward had died after serious clashes between firms from Aston Villa and Queen's Park Rangers after a League Cup game in 2004. On the 28th of January 2007, the Wolverhampton Wanderers hooligans rioted after their sides 3-0 home loss to local rivals West Bromwich Albion. 11 officers were injured, as well as 9 hooligans arrested, as bricks, bollards and road signs were thrown. This was as well as gas canisters being let off. The police fought running battles with hundreds of thugs as chaos descended onto the city centre. Drivers were surrounded by violence in Stafford Street, and bus passengers looked on as the angry mob surged past. Officers used dogs to catch yobs who tried to flip over police vehicles near Monolux. A number of pedestrians were injured after being caught up in the violence. After some 20 years of improved behaviour amongst English football fans, extreme scenes of rioting and hooliganism took place at Upton Park on the 25th of August 2009 during a Football League Cup second round tie between London rivals West Ham United and Millwall. The pitch was invaded several times during the game by West Ham fans, and rioting in the streets followed. In one incident, a Millwall fan suffered stab wounds. The West Ham United and Millwall rivalry has led to officials to threaten to hold fixtures between the two sides in private, although the threat has never been executed. It was used for a November 2014 Under-21s Premier League Cup tie between the two sides with their development squads, which was ordered by the Metropolitan Police to be played at Rush Green with a 12 PM kickoff behind closed doors.
The domestic football season is less than a month old. England are playing Germany in a crucial World Cup qualifier. Spirits are high among the English fans, and the atmosphere is good-humoured. By the day of the game, 10,000 English fans will descend on Munich. England-Germany is a fixture which, more than any other, has the potential for hooligan violence. There are 800 German police officers on duty, and the media want to know what's being done to combat the troublemakers. The English police in Germany make the customary reassuring noises.
There were 537 fans banned from travelling to Germany. There's an operation ongoing in the UK now at all ports, airports and seaports. We are not concerned about large numbers of hooligans coming across.
And these are the people that the media, the police and the British government are so concerned about. England fans, drawn from football clubs across the country, most with no intention other than having a drink and following the national team. But somewhere amongst them will be the hardcore hooligans. Using hidden cameras, we've spent the season finding out who they are, where they come from, and what happens away from the gaze of the media. It's clear straight away that police attempts to keep the troublemakers out of Germany have not been wholly successful. This is Glenn Ford from Burnley. At the European Championships in Belgium 2 years ago, Ford was one of the first of more than 900 England fans arrested. Nothing has been done to stop him coming to Munich. Around the corner, the first signs of trouble.
Was hier gerade passiert ist?
Wissen Sie was, ich weiß nicht, was da passiert. Ich war in der Küche, wo ich rausgekommen, da hat geflogen, die Tische, Stühle, Gläser, alles.
This is Anthony McCallion from Blackburn. He was also arrested and deported from Euro 2000 in Brussels. 2.5 hours before kick-off, and hundreds of English supporters have gathered outside the Schiller Cafe. The atmosphere has changed. By now it's clear that hooligan gangs, or firms, from clubs all over the country are here. German fans cheering their team is the only provocation the English need. In the midst of the mayhem are other known hooligans. This is Lenny from Wolverhampton. He's another veteran of Euro 2000. After 20 minutes, the German police appear to have the situation here under control. The authorities played down the extent of the violence.
If you look at the history of that fixture, you know, the tense atmosphere built up around it, by and large, I think one would agree that England supporters were, in the main, well behaved, and the German authorities were quick to praise the England fans. And I think, you know, violence was at a minimum in what could have been a very unpleasant and very difficult situation.
But away from the media and the public gaze, hidden cameras record the wanton vandalism and fighting that was to continue throughout the day. For the hooligans, it's turning out to be a fun afternoon. This is Carl, a Birmingham City supporter who was at the heart of the trouble outside the Schiller Cafe.
Yeah, I saw you loving a bottle.
Me? Would I do something like that? It's a full bottles as well. It's that German cunt money. It's good though, isn't it? It's what you want. Like I said before, like, now you know what Millwall feel like. Everybody fucking hates them. Wherever you go, there's a police presence.
That's right, yeah.
You can't beat this. It's just fucking mad.
It is, yeah.
And that George, is that Geordie fucking laying into him at the end?
Oh, the guy,
yeah. He's going fucking, he's drunk as well, like, he's fucking laying into him and everything.
For all the violence, the German police have made hardly any arrests.
Oi! How the fuck you making an arrest now? I do not know. You laid some good punches, you did.
Hey Lincoln,
Nah, well, with the Lincoln lads, but I'm Birmingham. But yeah.
Righto, driver, righto. Remember, no surrender to German bastards.
Both Stuart from Newcastle and Carl were involved in the trouble, but they aren't top boys, so-called Category C football hooligans who orchestrate the violence. Lenny is. We can't show his face for legal reasons, but he's a leading figure in a hooligan firm, the Wolves Subway Army.
I want you to fucking do the old bill, really. Fucking hate them. I do, you know I fucking hate them. I was in the street on my own shouting, go on, fucking do them.
I was near you and you was like going off your head on it and I saw you, man, you were up there.
Fuck, don't do me, I'll fucking do it.
I want the Germans.
I want anybody.
You're not Blues, are you? You Blues?
Wolves, mate.
Wolves, right, cool.
What's its name, skinhead?
This is Stephen Powner, another Wolves supporter.
Thompson, come to Dante with us.
We would meet Lenny and his firm again during the season.
Do you think there's going to be any more aggro later?
Yeah, all day.
Lenny's prediction seems to be accurate. In this kind of atmosphere, the usual banter between drunken fans rapidly descends into violence. The trouble spills out into Munich's main shopping street. Half a mile away, another group of English hooligans try to get to the Germans. Some unlikely ringleaders emerge.
Let the man get nicked just like that. Look, he ain't got no fight or nothing, is he? Come on, let's go for it. Come on.
The England fans finally make their way towards the Olympic Stadium for the match. But the trouble's not over. A hidden camera reveals some of the most vicious fighting at the underground station next to the stadium.
The game starts here in Munich, England's first match in Germany since the championships of '88.
The Football Association refused us permission to show any of the action from the match. They want to present a clean image of English football. In the pre-match editions of the newspapers, the hooligans had grabbed the headlines.
Heads it away a second time. Scholes brings.
But for once, events on the pitch were about to sweep aside any talk of violence.
Again. Heskey's running through the middle. Scholes to Heskey's onside. Heskey into the penalty area. Another goal for England. Get this scoreline. Germany 1, England 5.
It's usually only when England play abroad that we hear about football violence. There is a perception that in domestic football, the authorities have managed to stamp out the hooliganism of the 70s and 80s.
At the end of the 1980s, they said, "We have won." They actually used those words, "We have won, we have beaten football violence." They hadn't. There was a lull. The reason why there was a lull in football violence was because most of the top boys throughout the country were getting loved up on ecstasy pills and going to acid house clubs. Then the ecstasy went poor, they got bored of it, they went back to football violence. It's only ever a lull.
It's a lot more widespread than the general public realise. They might hear of 1 or 2 big incidents a year, but this thing happens week in, week out at different grounds all over the country. And it's like making a resurgence. Went through a stage of where it was down to like little 40s and 50s arranging to meet each other, and it was smaller but more organised. Now it seems to be getting back up to big firms again. Bigger numbers coming out, more people getting involved.
Hooligan groups are attached to nearly every football club. I find it a little bit difficult to say or name a football club which hadn't got a hooligan group of some sort. Something like Notts County would have a very tiny one. Other clubs would have a big one.
The new Den, home of Millwall Football Club. It's 6 hours before the First Division game against Nottingham Forest. Nearby, more than 200 police officers meet in a school hall for their pre-match briefing. They are expecting up to 2,000 Nottingham supporters to travel to South London for this high-profile fixture. Earlier in the day, a group of Nottingham Forest supporters boarded the 8:34 train to London. They are not part of any official supporters club, nor do they wear the colours of their team. They will arrive in London hours before most of the other fans. Using hidden cameras, we were to follow them.
Right, what we have today is Millwall and Nottingham Forest. The clubs haven't really played each other for a number of years, but in the past there has been some feeling between them and some instances of disorder. We anticipate, again, there could be disorder today. There are a number of fans coming down by train. Because of the intelligence for this event, dress will be public order kit. Be aware of that at all times, please.
The operation is costing more than £50,000, and officers have been drafted in from as far away as Kingston in Surrey. The train from Nottingham has arrived in London. Police intelligence suggests that in this group are known troublemakers, so the whole group is soon found and escorted by police officers. It's 4 hours before kick-off, and the pubs are opening.
We used to get up as early as possible, get to their city, find a bar, plot up in there, and just wait to see what happened. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go into an away game, the onus is on them. It's their town, it's their bars, it's their pitch.
Identifying who the troublemakers are and second-guessing what hooligans from the two clubs will do is the job of Millwall's football liaison officer.
Millwall generally will meet here at London Bridge. The 8:30 train from Nottingham brought about 100 or so Nottingham hooligans down on it. The main risk is if Nottingham and the Millwall supporters get together and we don't have sufficient officers to keep them apart. The problem we have is actually finding them and getting officers to them before the two groups get together.
But the police have become a lot better over the years, and they've realised it's small, contained units of hooligans rather than, you know, the mass mobs of 200-300 supporters, which it was in the 70s and 80s, where everybody with a scarf, hat, anything would just have pitched battles. Now it's run more along military lines.
The mobile phone is the weapon of choice in the battle of wits with the police. These Forest fans seem anxious to shake off their police escort and join up with another group from Nottingham who are drinking in the West End.
It don't matter, does it? Well, you name a pub, we'll come to you. We've got to get out of here before we get
This is Gary Clark, who has since been banned from attending England matches abroad, but not domestic games.
There's two bombs well, like Common Garden, and the old bullshit one bomb. What do you want to do? Common Garden's is probably a long way from South London, though, isn't it?
As the Forest group decide on their tactics for the day, Neil McPherson is trying to find out where the Millwall hooligan firm is meeting.
It's up to you. I mean, is Bermondsey pretty quiet? Yeah. London Bridge is dead. I mean, whatever you think best, Joe. Have a look at it if you want. But I've heard Surrey Quays mentioned a couple of times, so it could be they're meeting over there.
By 1:30, there are around 130 Forest fans in Covent Garden. They have singularly failed to shake off the police and are heading towards South London.
My concern at the moment is if the there's Millwall up at Surrey Quays. Yeah. If they jump on, there's a couple of pubs they're using there, but they're right outside the tube station. If they stay on at London Bridge, then they'll go to Canada Water and then Surrey Quays. Yeah. If they go straight past London Bridge, I'll let you know.
The police can't force the fans to go anywhere. All they can do is follow, watch, and wait.
We are hoping that they get off here at London Bridge. There's no Millwall supporters at London Bridge at the moment, so we're hoping they get off here and go to the ground. Or go for a drink, obviously, if that's what they want to do.
Hi, Bob, that for you.
They're coming up.
For your information, so they're just getting off at London Bridge now, the Forest lot. Push everyone over this side and this side. Yeah, fine. It's two complete cars, yeah, I would think so. Just want to move away.
Is there a bomb scare or something?
No, I wish it were that simple. No, it's just football supporters. Hello, Mick. Sounds like they've slipped out a side entrance here, mate. Yeah, we're not sure where they are. They're off the train, we're just trying to find them. Go on, you go through.
They haven't gone far. They gather in two pubs near the station. This is Millwall territory.
Even if all that actually happens is you get to their pub before they do, and by the time they arrive, there's 200 of you in there, and they can't get in, and the police don't let them in, then even though you haven't had a row, you've still had a bit of a result which you can laugh at.
The latest we've got at the moment is Millwall are still at or near the ground, and the plan is we will escort the Nottingham Forest supporters to South Bermondsey via London Bridge and then into the ground. All the time we've got the Forest together, we won't have a problem. Millwall's intention will be to get through the police lines and attack the Nottingham Forest supporters, and to a certain extent, I've no doubt Forest are considering the same.
Rival hooligan groups will go to great lengths to meet up and fight.
They ring each other up and they arrange things. They even talk to each other and signal each other across football grounds. You can see one hooligan leader in a football ground, one side, another the other side, and then you'll look again and see them sat together.
Inside the Forest pub, Gary Clark seems to be reporting his contacts with Millwall supporters to his fellow Forest fans.
Just had a word with the governor here. They're not going to be allowed out now. They're not going to be allowed anything. They'll all be taken up together as a group. What I'd like to do is go in there with you and tell them. Will they be receptive to that?
Yeah, I don't think they know what's fucking happening. So.
All right, if we go in. I mean, we'll go whenever they want.
Some of these out here,
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. All right. All right, chaps. Who can I speak to that's got can get a message round?
The Forest fans are taken with a massive police escort back to London Bridge for the short hop to South Bermondsey station. So far there has been no trouble and no sign of any Millwall hooligans. It's only a quarter of a mile from the station to the ground.
With Millwall, it's like the same with West Ham and Cardiff and everyone living with a close proximity to the ground. That the whole neighbourhood can come out, the whole community comes out, and it's not like some of the other clubs where people have got to travel into it. At Millwall, the whole estate, come out. Opposing firms to get to the ground have got to go through all the local estates, and everybody's up for it.
There's a siege mentality at Millwall. Camera crews are not welcome. Fans feel the media have always unfairly portrayed their club. Millwall Football Club declined to cooperate with this programme, and we were not allowed to film in the stadium.
The game's almost finished now. From over this side, the Forest supporters will come out. What we're going to do, because it's been quite tense in there during the game, we'll be holding them back for a few minutes until let all the Millwall supporters out. They will go out that way, out onto the main road behind you and away. We will then clear the main road and take the Nottingham Forest supporters down to the station.
10 minutes before the final whistle, Millwall are losing 3-2. A group of Millwall fans have left early and are gathering near where the away supporters will exit the stadium. But in the last minute, Millwall equalise. Fans attack a police horse and start to throw missiles. They move towards the police lines. Video evidence is useful for making arrests.
Did you get anything earlier?
Yeah, they come up here and all the time from that in there.
Great.
Got quite a few in there. How many do you think are hanging around?
Well, I would say there's a good 200 or 300 up there. There's some of the main lads up there as well, but I can see 1 or 2 faces already.
945. We're going to fucking march out and take the South Birmingham. Yeah, and they're probably trying to hold us back. See what happens.
Once again, the mobile phones are busy.
Yeah. All you do is play it by now, same as us.
The police clear the road so they can assist the Forest fans to the trains. At South Bermondsey Station, trouble is brewing. As police clear the area, missiles begin to fly.
We've got probably 1,000 Forest supporters going onto the station. And behind me we've got several hundred Millwall supporters intent on throwing bricks and bottles at them. It was a good game apparently. As you saw, we cleared the road. For some reason they just started throwing bricks and bottles at us. And I have no idea why it happens.
Come on, Millwall, don't run! We're Millwall!
As the Forest fans get onto the station platform, the Millwall hooligans try to break through and attack them.
Bronze 2, India 99. You watching the pictures? Got a group of about 15 around that gate, giving it a good old go, trying to break through it.
With the Forest fans safely on the train, the older hooligans give up, leaving the younger ones to turn their attention to the police.
Yeah, received. We're looking at that now. We've got groups running around in the road under the bridge, and another group standing on the corner by the pub, over.
They are encouraged with an old terrorist song glorifying the small-time crook Harry Roberts, who murdered 3 policemen.
They're just trying to go around the back of them at the moment. I don't know if you're aware.
Come on here. Sorry?
They're going around the back of them at the moment.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, all right. So as long as you're aware, I'm just letting them know to clock a couple and make sure we get them.
Control, give us general
The streets are finally cleared. The season is only 2 months old, yet this is already the 4th time there has been major disorder at Millwall.
We've tried everything. We've tried letting everyone out together. We've tried just a couple of PCs walking up the road. We've tried everything, and nothing works, and it always ends in exactly the same scenario. We can't give up on it, but it does make you want to give up.
Millwall has always had a poor reputation for football violence, but it's by no means alone. By the end of October, just a third of the way through the season, there have been 19 football-related incidents of violent disorder around the country.
It's difficult to say what attracts a large hooligan group from a particular club. Some of the problems are worse in the lower leagues than the higher leagues. There are certain small clubs that have bad hooligan groups, so they're more dangerous, some of the smaller club groups, than the larger club groups.
I had my experiences specifically with Stoke City, where it's a very tight firm that look after each other. There's a lot of respect and there's a lot of loyalty. Now, at the end of the day, the essence of what you're doing is going to a football match to get involved in a fight. And so the thing that you need to know most of all is that the people that you're with will look out for you and will be there.
The First Division derby between Walsall and Wolves. A group of 20 or 30 Wolves supporters are drinking in the town centre before the evening kick-off. West Midlands police seem to be taking a keen interest. In the corner of the pub is Stephen Powner. He was in Munich with Lenny, a top hooligan in the Wolves subway army. Quarter of an hour before kick-off, and small groups of Walsall and Wolves fans are roaming the streets.
Basically, if you're a proper football firm, what you want to do is find their football firm, their top boys, and fight them. No interest in punching somebody that's walking down the road with a rattle and a rosette on. All you're interested in is finding the people that are the same as you, that are there for the same reason, and going toe-to-toe with them.
Well, can you carry on walking down there? Well, I wasn't walking down there, I was walking this way. Well, you're walking down there.
Inadvertently, our undercover cameraman gets caught up with some Walsall fans. The police are keeping them away from the Wolves supporters who are further up the road. When there's a risk of violence, the police can issue a Section 60 order, which gives them the power to stop and search anyone for weapons.
No, we're not, no.
No?
We're not? Okay, well, there's a Section 60 around here, right? Yeah. Which means that we can stop and search anybody, and we're going to search you under that power.
The problem is that if the officers find the secret filming equipment while the hooligans are still around, our team could be in extreme danger.
And it's recorded.
Okay.
Luckily, they understand the situation and agree to do the search discreetly.
Just looks better as well if we're searching as well, that.
Of course, understandable.
5'10" here, 11?
11.
Colours, yeah.
Brown, mousy brown.
Okay, this is your copy of the search form. Okay, I've just got your details on there. The reason why you've been stopped, okay, and my details on the bottom.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you, goodbye.
The game has now started, but still there are small groups wandering the streets.
The most violent things are when you get little groups of like half a dozen of each team just bump into each other. They're the ones that get the right nasty things rather than the big, hundreds and hundreds where the police are there, and you do get that fear because anything can happen.
You come out with them, what you got to say now then, big man?
You what, mate?
Yeah, what you got to say, you come out with them, lot there, from that
Where just fucking...
It's Lenny and the Wolves firm.
Walsall boys, gobby fuckers.
Fuck off, we're
Who
not
tend to
Wolves.
fuck off?
No, sorry, mate.
Where are you from then?
You're from Wolves.
Let's have a look at your address then.
They mistake us for Walsall fans.
Bramford Hall,
Yeah, I was in Munich.
Walsall.
A bit of quick thinking, and Lenny seems flattered that we know him from the England game.
Where are you from then?
He's in forgiving mood.
No, we didn't, honest.
I'll see you later. Go on, enjoy yourself. Go on, enjoy yourself.
Lenny and the Wolves firm would turn out to be active throughout the season. Football hooligans like Lenny don't wear the colours of their team. They have their own dress code. Top designer labels: Burberry, Lacoste, Aquascutum, and above all, Stone Island. Sometimes the only clue to team allegiance is a tiny pin badge.
It's not about the actual fighting. There's more to it than that. It's a whole subculture of putting yourself on show, who's got the nicest clothes. People might deny it, but deep down that's the truth. They know they wouldn't, you know, if their missus hid all their best clobber, there's no way they're going to go to the game in a Fruits of the Loom t-shirt. They just wouldn't.
If I knew that we were playing a particular game against a particular team or at a particular firm, in fact really for any game, it would be as important for me to be better dressed than the opposition as turning out in big numbers.
People would sort of like go out and buy a new outfit for the game. It's almost like it was someone's wedding and you have to buy a new outfit for the day. You know, like women buy a new hat for a wedding. You know, guys go out and buy a new £400 jacket for Leicester away.
They invariably don't wear colours. It's only up until recently you would see many public houses, people with football colours not allowed entry. Well, actually, the reverse is the case now. At Cardiff recently, the pubs had signs saying nobody wearing Stone Island, Rockport or Lloyd or whatever will be allowed in. Because they identify the people who wear the shirts and scarves these days are going to the match to watch the football. The people who perhaps wear the other gear are going there for something else.
It's England versus Greece. England need at least a draw to qualify for the World Cup. And around the ground, the atmosphere is optimistic. But in the city centre, the reality is somewhat different. Police intelligence suggests that this fixture will attract the largest gathering of prominent football hooligans since Euro 2000. They're not here to fight the Greeks, they're here to fight each other.
Outside Sawyers is a group of Burnley, so we don't know at this stage whether it's for a confrontation or whether to meet up together. All right, bud.
DC Graham Norton coordinates intelligence on hooligans for the British Transport Police.
We've got Preston North End group have just arrived, and also within this vicinity is a group of Burnley, so obviously it would be advantageous if they didn't come together. We've got people from Manchester United, we've got Oldham, we've got Stoke City, we've got Huddersfield Town, we've got Shrewsbury. They're all people we thought would be here. They're known to a lot of our officers. They are here and we're going to deal with it. What we think is that perhaps there will be attempts at some days sometime during the day for these groups to get together for the purposes of causing violence.
The police tactics are to swamp the city. There are more than 800 officers on duty. They stop and search hundreds of fans, most of them there just for the football.
Excuse me, mate, can I have a word? Yes, sure. You'll probably be aware that, because there normally is when there's an England match, that there's a Section 60 in place. Have you got a ticket for the game?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, can I just have a look?
Yep.
Yeah. Which team do you support?
Me, Preston.
OK, mate, thanks. Sorry to be.
This supporter has no history of causing trouble, but the intelligence is still useful.
Shaking like a leaf, huh?
Is he? I mean, the other lads, I didn't know the other group. I presume they're all Cardiff lads, because he's a Cardiff lad.
He said he's with 8 from Cardiff and Barrow.
Yeah.
Why'd you go to him?
When I walked onto the concourse and stood straight, he took a diversion so that he didn't have to walk past me. So I thought, well, let's have a look. So we will be now passed into the system and monitored in the city.
The police tactics aren't popular among law-abiding fans.
I watch England everywhere, Munich, everywhere. And it doesn't matter what country you go in Europe, go anywhere in the world, and I don't take your liberties away. It's ridiculous. I mean, the security you got here, I mean, it's England-Greece. I mean, it's not even like a category, I mean, you know, it's not Germany. I mean, why all the hassle? I mean, why? That is to take away of your liberty. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's a game of football after all.
One of the crucial times is as the fans start moving towards the stadium. then we could have a scenario dealing with what is left behind in the city who haven't got tickets for the game but are then intent on watching it on the TV, or if they have other motives.
In the city centre, police are suspicious of any large groups who haven't gone to the game, like these supporters from the Midlands. They are summarily rounded up and escorted to the station. The police are also concerned about another group drinking in the Shakespeare pub.
Can we go out now, mate? Not as far as I'm aware of, no.
Inside are 50 or 60 fans from Stoke City, a club whose supporters have one of the worst reputations for football violence in the country. They may be penned in by the police, but at least they can watch the match on TV. Half a mile away, tempers are fraying.
It's my day off. I'm going to watch a football match. But you won't let me do it, will you? We're stuck here like fucking animals, ain't we? So, we'd rather go home on trains, or let's go.
The 93rd minute at Old Trafford.
Beckham's last-minute free kick means England have qualified for the World Cup. With the game now over, the Stoke fans want to leave the Shakespeare. The police won't let them. Stoke resort to a favourite tactic. Trouble is now breaking out around the city. At another pub, Sheffield United hooligans have attacked the Oldham hooligan firm. Other clashes that evening involved Manchester United, Stoke City and Manchester City.
In effect, it is England hooligans versus England hooligans. The Northwest groups of hooligans were quite prominent throughout the day, as well as hooligan groups from the Midlands and London. So all the intelligence that suggested the possibility of trouble was in fact correct. So that, for the level of policing to the outsider looking in was exceptionally large. It was probably just about proportionate to deal with the problem we had.
The British Transport Police alone will have spent £10 million policing football this season, and forces around the country at least 50 million more. Only a small proportion is paid for by football clubs.
It costs an absolute fortune, and the police resources that's put into it is enormous. The whole of the policing operation around a football ground, with the exception of the odd traffic point, was all about monitoring hooligans. Nothing else. Stopping hooligan groups getting together and having a fight. That's where all the resources go.
A cold Thursday night in the West Midlands. The police are once again out in force, but for a much less glamorous fixture. The local rivalry between West Bromwich Albion, known as the Baggies, and Wolves is even more intense as the two clubs battle for promotion to the Premiership.
Winter gets ready to get us underway, and we're off and running for this 148th derby meeting between the two teams. Sigurdsson heads it away. McInnes helps it on. Kennedy gets there. Swaps it to...
The game ends in a 1-1 draw. There have already been minor clashes between rival fans. The police have blocked the main road to keep the two sets of supporters apart as they leave the ground.
Possibility to get very badly hurt is always there, and in some cases people have been badly hurt, but that's all part of the gamble, that's all part of the buzz.
As the police try to hold back the Albion fans, we hear a voice we recognise. It's Lenny of the Wolves Subway Army.
The buzz is that point where fear hits you and the adrenaline hits you like that, and the difference is whether it stuns you like a rabbit caught in the headlights, whether you take a hold of it and go, come on, let's go.
Albion fans break through the police line. In the confusion, it's not clear who's friend and who's foe. Our undercover cameraman is punched. Lenny is approached by a West Brom fan. He lies, then seconds later punches the unsuspecting man to the ground. The police draw batons to break up the rival fans. The local phone-in programme is dominated by the shocked reaction.
Just come out the ground and I'm with my mum and we just nearly got crushed, you know, because the police wouldn't let us pass them.
Well, we've just heard that there were kids, you know, crying and all sorts of things.
I mean, it's terrible.
I've got my son with me, absolutely petrified. The police have come charging towards us, batons thrown. They should just lock them in, like they do at the Molyneux. They keep it'll sit in there. They always have done for years.
By the new year, the midway point of the season, there had been 27 serious incidents of football-related violence at matches in all 4 divisions. A small number of dedicated hooligans orchestrate this violence. Mostly in their 30s and 40s, they've been active for years. Lenny is one of them. In his mid-30s, a father of 2, he's a petty criminal living off state benefits. He has a formidable record of football violence, including a conviction for spraying a police officer with CS gas. Although he's been banned in the past, Lenny is now free to attend football matches, including this season's friendly between England and Sweden.
I don't think you can stereotype them, but what you can say is that they come from all spectrums of society, from unemployed drug addicts right up to practicing solicitors.
Accountants, surveyors, brickies, roofers, lads that work on the city. There's no typical football firm, there's no typical football hooligan.
More often than not, working men. More often than not, family men. More often than not, throughout the normal week, outwardly perfectly normal law-abiding citizens.
The only thing that we all have in common is that we love football and we like a row. That's basically it.
Millwall versus Portsmouth in the First Division, 2 clubs with significant hooligan firms. 9 years ago, Millwall moved to a modern all-seater stadium in Bermondsey. Football clubs have gone a long way towards stamping out the violence in the grounds. Mass brawls on the terraces have become a thing of the past. These days, football violence takes a very different form.
I know people that regularly used to go on reconnaissance missions weeks before the away fixture, so that they would know what pubs were there, the layout of the streets around the ground.
Groups travelling to away games, they'd have road maps, like mobile phones, they'd just organise in a different way. They'd send decoys off to send the police off on wrong routes, and then call the other firm and arrange the venue. And there's a great cooperation between 2 different hooligan firms that want to fight each other.
And often the chosen venue is nowhere near the stadium. By 5 o'clock, the Portsmouth hooligans were in a pub near Waterloo Station, 3 miles from Millwall's ground.
I thought it was 2 Christmas parties coming in, and there was so many guys in the pub at the time. So I started asking a few guys, are you from the Christmas party or who are you? And they said Portsmouth. So I says, oh, there's something going to kick off here. So I seen more people coming in, seen more people on mobile phones, the whole lot, and then I went, there's something going to happen. And then all of a sudden, I heard a charge at the front door, and I turned around and I seen guys just running in the front door over there. You hear lads charging with tables and stools and chairs. But all I could hear was glass smashing. It was just mayhem. I thought it was the end of the world.
You've got ordinary members of the public having just left work, going to the station, and they're watching 100 people fighting in and around a pub. I mean...
Sheep show everywhere.
It's the first day of the football season. Cardiff, more than many cities, is touched by its darker side.
We seem to see a re-emergence of thuggery. You get damage to property, you get injuries, people are injured. There's contact between the Cardiff supporters and those visiting, and they will arrange to meet, and almost battle lines are drawn.
If you come into Cardiff, then you're coming into Wales, you're coming into their area, and they're very tribal about stuff like that, you know, because people have got an affinity to that club because it's the focal point of their community. That represents them because of the numbers they've got. I mean, if everyone is wary of going down to Cardiff.
Ninian Park, the home of Cardiff City Football Club. A small hardcore group of hooligans here, the Soul Crew, have one of the worst reputations in the country. Cardiff's season in the second division starts against Wycombe Wanderers. The vast majority of Cardiff supporters are friendly and well behaved, though travelling fans get a fair amount of abuse. After Cardiff take the lead, much of the shouting is directed at the away supporters.
The passion of support is intense. It's something you can't describe. The atmosphere, sometimes people say, is electric, and that is the way it is at Ninian Park. But there's intensity, and there's that point which it moves beyond intensity into hatred. And that, unfortunately, can happen at Cardiff from time to time.
Within hours, some will look for trouble with fans from bigger clubs. Nearby, Cardiff's Millennium Stadium is the Charity Shield match between Manchester United and Liverpool the next day. And some Manchester United fans are already arriving. As Cardiff are still playing, Manchester fans take over one of the Cardiff supporters' pubs. Using hidden cameras, we set out to see what will happen.
Which team are you supporting today?
Cardiff.
No, not Cardiff, mate. It's
Man U. Is it Man U in there?
Yeah.
With Cardiff supporters excluded, United fans are jubilant.
Fellas, you're not going to get a drink in you and you're not going to stand your eyes, all right? It's our pub, though. It's our pub, isn't it?
But some local fans don't like it. They're now crowded around another pub, the Borough, just around the corner. Among them are known hooligans, members of Cardiff's Soul Crew. Suddenly a mob of United fans leave, apparently trying to reach the Cardiff fans. Cardiff run towards them. Police attempt to keep them apart by pinning back the United fans. But Cardiff are now mobbed into one large group.
There's nothing like that indescribable buzz when something is just about to go off. Unless you've been there and involved in it, it's very difficult to explain and to understand it. It's very difficult to replace.
Let's fucking run the coppers! Buddy, come on! Hey, let's make them earn their fucking money!
They charge at the police. They're chanting Soul Crew, now believed to be one of the biggest hooligan groups in the country. As the police try to regroup, there appear to be people coming from all sides. Officers are being pushed to their limits. Some Cardiff fans are on the hunt for anyone from across the border.
I can smell fucking English. You smell her? It's the smell of fucking English.
Others have confronted the United fans who are being escorted away by police.
We had it with 20 on this now, we run them back into the escort like they were shit. 20 of them come out, give it a fucking stood there like we went over to them, bang bang, they were gone. Run back into the escort like, funny as fuck.
Football violence soon melts into the sort of Saturday night trouble known to most British towns and city centres. By now, the Cardiff fans have returned to their pub, the Borough. Another match day is over. This is a South Wales Police football intelligence sheet. It focuses on people they associate with Cardiff hooliganism. Most of these men have several football-related convictions. Some were present during the trouble that weekend, but most of those who were involved aren't even known to the police. This is the main website for the Soul Crew's activities. The site offers advice for those who get arrested. The links page gives you access to a world of hooligan sites, run and followed by a network of people across England, Wales and beyond, from very different professions.
I know people that are unemployed, I know people that are school teachers. People just do it because they enjoy it. With me, it was just like an escapism because I was like living in a bad situation with stepdad and I couldn't really stand up to him, you know. So when I went to Chelsea, it was just like I was just escaping from it. I could immerse myself in that and take out my frustrations. To have all the police worrying about what our group was doing, it just gave me a sense of importance and a sense of you know, worth.
At football, Wells also joined a small right-wing group of political extremists, Combat 18.
But a lot of C18 supporters were so into football anyway. We had a lot of the same objectives, a lot of the same goals. Whereas in C18 we were looking to promote a political agenda. We still enjoyed the violence of the English hooliganism.
And the routine skirmishes of football violence can have far greater consequences, both social and political.
For everything, there is a beginning. For the Olympics, it was ancient Greece. Football's birthplace is England.
After the success of Euro '96, there was optimism about the English game and the ability to police it. The government spent £10 million to try and stage the 2006 World Cup in England. There was competition from Germany and South Africa. But some of those promoting the bid felt that hooliganism was an issue that still hadn't gone away and could derail it. They were worried the government hadn't recognised the problem.
I just feel that that they weren't really in full grasp of the reality of the situation. I don't think they really fully understood how serious the matter was.
Although new anti-hooligan laws were passed, they fell short of stopping known thugs travelling to England games abroad. As the bidding process for the World Cup neared its end, the Euro 2000 tournament began in Belgium and Holland. 1,000 fans from England, the huge majority peaceful, joined supporters from all over Europe, but the bid's promoters were worried.
There were so many problems that were not being addressed that trouble was inevitable. It was inevitable.
England's crucial game against Germany was to be held in a small town 30 miles from Brussels.
The Germans was a big game in Charleroi, and everyone knew that was going to be the top thing. Who in their right mind would want to miss the Germans in Euro 2000?
Already there were many hooligan groups, or firms, making plans to travel to support England. But perhaps the least expected was Welsh, the Soul Crew. And at least one convicted Cardiff hooligan decided to make the trip. Shane Weldon was banned from Cardiff matches. He had to the far-right group Combat 18. He also knew Darren Wells.
Euro 2000 was just going to be like France 98. I looked at it and I thought, well, I didn't get into France 98. You know, the police won that little battle. But I'm determined to get into Brussels, which is why I left days before the game. Even on the way into London, you know, you start thinking, you know, this could either be the start of the greatest week of my life, or I could be coming home in half an hour.
Wells and Weldon travelled on the Eurostar. Police were checking lists of suspected hooligans.
You get to the barrier and you're going through it, you just think, this is it, any minute now, they're just going to pull you to the side and, you know, say, you know, sorry, you're not going, or they're going to take your passport, they're going to take you into custody.
Weldon, then on bail for football-related charges, was supposed to have reported the same morning to his local police station. Wells, too, had a conviction for public disorder. Both men had tickets with false names. No one checked them against the names in their passports, so they got through.
It was a mixture of being surprised, elated, but still semi-apprehensive, because that's just half the battle. You know, you still got to get off the other end at Brussels. Going abroad with England is just the biggest buzz of all. Weeks and weeks before a specific away match, all the papers in that country, and it'll all be like, the English are coming to town, the English are coming to town, everybody get ready, what are we going to do when the English are here? And it builds up that emotion. You're actually going off to war, you know, you're travelling to continental Europe in defence of England. So you hit these continental lands, and we've got nothing in common with these people, continental Europeans, innit? You know, they hate us and we hate them, and that's fine. You know, we're the most detested race in Europe, and I love it. It's just the way it should be.
English police, known as spotters, were in Brussels, liaising with the Belgians to help identify known troublemakers.
All the governments, if you like, chickened out of taking away somebody's liberty who was trying to get abroad and was a convicted hooligan. And so what we ended up with was all the people would get there anyway somehow. So we then started to see people arriving in the town. We recognised them, we knew where they were, we knew where they'd meet, and we knew roughly where the problems would start.
I got messages from people that were already in Brussels prior to me, saying that they would be meeting at O'Reilly's. There was all kinds of firms in Brussels at that stage. Teams like Huddersfield, Wolves, Burnley, Oldham. You meet in the middle of the city, putting on the biggest show that you can. The other English fans will come in and join you, and all that the locals can see that you're there, and they can try and be as obnoxious as possible, as early as possible. It's a cross between people who are totally in fear of us, and we're like a circus act.
We're thoroughly ashamed for a start. Trying to explain that these were English, but all English people aren't like that is very, very difficult. We are all then tarred with the same brush of these horrible people.
By Friday afternoon, everyone realised that, you know, that that all the pubs were just full of different firms in each pub, and everyone just knew that it would just be the slightest thing that would spark it off. But there was just too many English there for it not to go off.
Filming this group, English police spotters see another face from the Cardiff football sheet. Anis Abraham, a millionaire businessman. Wearing a black shirt, he's talking to a group from Blackburn. There's an argument. Abraham gets pushed back. He lashes out. The spotters talk about arresting him.
Single one big round should be named. The rest of one you can arrest. The one.
It's the first fight of the day. Abraham is defiant.
He was involved in the centre of the activity. He was well known to us, but he came from nowhere. In that we were watching the other leaders in that group from other clubs, and he sort of came in on it, and that was the meeting over there where he first was seen to be involved.
The fighting spreads. Plainclothes Belgian police move in.
But I was drinking on the other side of the town centre. We got phone calls saying it was all getting lively at O'Reilly's, and we weren't anticipating that to happen until midnight. But we decided we'd head down that way.
A short walk from the main square, many known hooligans were gathering. Some were from Cardiff, but among them, Martin Fielding, a far-right activist from Oldham. With the Cardiff group, Anis Abraham and, surprisingly, Di Thomas. Surprising because he was a professional footballer with Cardiff City. A match between France and the Czech Republic has just finished on TV in the bar.
The French were playing and they scored a goal and won a game, and they came out of a bar shouting for the French, and that was ready-made for the hooligans who were in a bar opposite, and they dived in on them, and that started the first part of the interesting rioting, which was a them and us and the police. We'll do some damage, we'll throw at the police, and we'll get everybody involved.
At the front, known hooligans from Cardiff, Oldham and other smaller clubs. The riot police close in. Abraham is standing with some of the English group. He shouts towards the police lines. Some attack O'Reilly's, among them Oldham's Martin Fielding and Di Thomas, the footballer. Anis Abraham, the Cardiff millionaire, is also there. All three are figures that will soon feature in events back home. The rest of the mob then rampage for several hours. The police send in tear gas. Soon the hooligans regroup outside another bar. Some are still looking for trouble and for fights with passers-by. Bottles and chairs are thrown. Some hooligans flee into a bar as the police start to move in.
They just flooded that particular back street. They're both ends of it. They had another lot in backup. There was no way out. So it's just futile to do anything. Then you just got to accept that's the end of your tournament. The next thing, 2 Belgian police came back through about 3 or 4 people, and then my legs just went up, my head went down, and the next thing everyone else was just told to sit down, and they were whacking people.
As glasses are being thrown at the window from the inside, police decide to fire tear gas into the bar. The England fans inside spill out. Police accept that many apparently innocent supporters may be arrested. But there were many faces who had been involved in the trouble earlier, among them Thomas the footballer.
The police started bringing trucks up, ferrying us back to it was like an army barracks or something like that, police barracks. And they was getting us out one or two at a time, and setting us up against this wall with a water cannon. So we're in a big line now, about 150, 200 of us.
Di Thomas is brought into the station, but gives a false name. Also arrested Martin Fielding from Oldham. The next day in Charleroi, England played Germany. Those representing England's World Cup bid were hoping the early good humour would last. It didn't. The incidents were minor to those in Brussels, but this time the world was watching.
You just felt that that was it. I mean, I wanted to give up at that particular point because I just knew that the impact that was likely to have on our 2006 World Cup campaign. And it was an awful thought, given all the work that had been put into that 2006 campaign by so many people.
Tony Blair heard the news at a European summit.
What we've got to do is to obviously look at and see what it is that we can do for the future to make sure that this can't be repeated. But it is important to emphasise that the vast majority of these people, so far as we're aware, weren't on any intelligence records at all.
You could walk down that group and you could go Middlesbrough, Tottenham, Leeds, Oldham, Shrewsbury, Newcastle. You could go down the line and you could pick out the groups of people who are known troublemakers.
And are you going to apologise to the Belgian Prime Minister?
I certainly deeply regret the behaviour of a small group of people who aren't really football fans at all. They're hooligans who disgrace and shame this country.
The only thing that gets you through when you're in jail is the thought of Tony Blair having to stand up in Parliament and apologise to another country because of what I've done. I just think it's fantastic. The more damaging our actions, the better it is.
Hundreds were soon deported, though only one person has ever been prosecuted for the Belgium riots. 4 weeks later, at the headquarters of World Football in Switzerland, the England bid team went to hear the result. The government had passed new laws removing hooligans' passports, but by then, it was too late.
And the winner is Deutschland.
That was fantastic. I think it's the best thing that could have happened. We wouldn't want the World Cup in England. The World Cup's something you build up for and you look forward to travelling to, like Germany. World Cup 2006, now going to be in Germany. The thought of playing the Germans in Munich or, you know, playing the Dutch in Stuttgart, it's much more appealing to travel over there and, you know, on a crusade than to play them in Coventry. And who wants to go to Coventry? God, man.
Back home, most of those involved in the trouble melted away. But Cardiff City couldn't ignore what had happened.
Just on the corner there. Pull away, Di. Pull away, Di. Finish
Its
it.
striker, a former Wales under-21, Di Thomas, had been recognised in Brussels. He was under pressure to explain his involvement. He denied any part in the events. His spokesman even said he was nowhere near them. It was only when footage from Belgium was later released, showing Thomas being disorderly and ripping up fencing, that Cardiff City fined him £3,000 and suspended him. He never played for the club again. Anis Abraham, the millionaire who travelled to Brussels with Thomas, was also shown among the rioters. Abraham was a well-known local businessman with a passion for Cardiff City. His family's businesses were worth millions, and he had a comfortable lifestyle to show for it. He'd once offered to help buy a player for the club. But police had also regularly seen Abraham at matches with convicted hooligans.
He's a well-known figure. He has been on the scene in Cardiff for a long, long time. And again, has in the past been present when violence has taken place. Now, there's no evidence to suggest he's directly involved in that violence, but his presence continually up until last season, I must say, is questionable.
Like Thomas, Abraham denied being involved in the trouble. He said, "If I was throwing punches, then I should be banned, but I wasn't doing anything." Cardiff City, who may not have seen the footage, took no action. But Abraham had been present at several points in the rioting. He was gassed in the Fiacre bar, where he tried to avoid the cameras and arrest. He wasn't arrested, but was taken briefly to hospital. Within months of Euro 2000, Cardiff City had a new owner, one with a unique approach to hooliganism. Sam Hammam was a Lebanese-born property developer.
When Sam Hammam arrived in Cardiff, it was interesting because, of course, it meant investment. Here was a man who was going to invest substantial sums of money in what was an alien football club.
Hammam, who had once owned Wimbledon Football Club, seemed as at home among supporters as in the boardroom.
He's not like that at all.
His style when meeting fans was unorthodox.
We tell everyone we're fucking sheep shaggers everywhere.
Sheep shagger, sheep shagger.
Yeah. You fucking bastards, you want to keep spending my money until I'm fucked.
Hammam started to befriend other prominent supporters. At a fans meeting attended by at least one banned hooligan, Hammam is seen here with Anis Abraham. They're discussing going on to a local nightclub.
See you later, lads.
We saw the pictures from Brussels and we saw Anis's involvement in what was happening there. And it was a concern of ours that the owner, a very prominent owner of a football club, so should be seen to be so closely associated with someone who has, if not directly, indirectly, connections with those responsible for football violence.
Sam Hammam soon travelled across South Wales, meeting fans who were directly involved in violence. He said this was part of a new approach, to try to rid the club of hooliganism by reaching out to the perpetrators. He said of hooligans, "You have to get into somebody's mind. A lot of those people have reasons why they behave the way they do." He's spoken of taming hooligans with love and hugs. "Bring me the biggest nutter," he said, "and I will change him." And he didn't just talk. He gave some jobs. Sam Hammam's new head of personal security was a convicted football hooligan. We can't name him for legal reasons. But Hammam's policy of trying to reform hooligans raised serious concerns.
He believes in rehabilitation. I'm not against that. I think that's got its proper place. But to bring people who are clearly been involved, directly and indirectly, in football hooliganism into the heart of a football club is really, in my view, almost endorsing their behaviour.
And the club had an odd response to police requests. Stoke City's ground, the Britannia Stadium. A month before Euro 2000, Cardiff fans rioted in some of the worst football disorder in years. Now under Sam Hammam, Cardiff City refused police requests to publish sheets of suspects in their matchday programmes.
Meetings are arranged that were either delayed or postponed. There seemed to be a reluctance on the part of the club to step into the spotlight and condemn what had happened at Stoke. In fact, at one stage it was suggested by the club that much of the trouble was actually caused by the police themselves in overzealous policing.
But the club was prepared to help others.
This was a suggestion by the club that they would in fact provide legal assistance and legal representation for anybody who was arrested as a result of the inquiry at Stoke. I was entirely flabbergasted by that. Now that's not to say that all were guilty, but I'm sure that in identifying the individuals are very clear, unequivocal video evidence of those individuals engaged in acts of violence. So the club's response was, to the least, surprising.
Around 70 Cardiff supporters received bans from this one match. The club currently has almost 100 bans, the highest in the football league. We couldn't meet Cardiff City's conditions for giving us an interview, but the club has said it would publish pictures of suspected hooligans if police agreed to be liable for any complaints. Because of these concerns, Stoke Police say they printed a separate sheet, but Cardiff never put it in their match programmes. By the end of last season, Hammam had brought Abraham and another face known to the police into the heart of the club, John Simmons. Simmons has previous convictions, though not football related. This is police footage of him goading rival supporters. Having just won promotion to Division 2, Simmons and Abraham took part in a special coach trip to see a match against Man Town. Hammam posed on board with the Soul Crew. The pictures were posted on a Soul Crew website under the heading Sam and the Boys, with all faces except Hammam's hidden. The coaches stopped off at this hotel near Mansfield. Inside, Hammam posed again with the group. The reception was reported as another attempt by Hammam to improve hooligan behaviour. He said he was proud to travel with the Soul Crew.
I don't think we should court these people in providing them with coaches to travel away to games, to provide them with entertainment, to provide them with alcohol, for example. I think that's going too far, and again, is open to much misinterpretation, not just by us in terms of policing and the other authorities, but by the other supporters themselves. I know that many of the supporters in Cardiff are very unhappy in what Sam Hammam did.
And Hammam's attempts to reform hooligans with champagne had mixed results. Among those present, Di Thomas, the ex-footballer, John Simmons' son Lee, and others, who have all since been convicted. John Simmons, too, is hardly reformed. We've secretly filmed him on the hunt for trouble at matches. Here he's at Wrexham, part of a group pushed back by police dogs as it tries to reach the Wrexham fans. The same group then chants Soul Crew at rival hooligans.
Soul Crew! Soul Crew! Soul Crew!
And Simmons has been meeting hooligan friends from further afield. Before a game in London, he's chatting with Matthew Marion of the far-right Combat 18 group, banned from football matches and seen in the Brussels riots. We've witnessed him with Marion more than once, and with another Combat 18 member, Darren Wells.
Simmons is one of the top boys down at Cardiff. He's just well respected by all the different firms. When anyone who knows of Cardiff knows of Simo, he's just got that reputation about him. Simo just knew me as like C18 rather than any football club.
Wells and the network of Combat 18 hooligans had also been active since Euro 2000, this time with far more serious social consequences. These were the worst race riots in Britain for nearly 20 years and shocked the nation. But there was another story behind the racial unrest, the seeds of which were exploited by hooligans in the weeks before. At Oldham Athletic, there are a small number, perhaps 30 or 40, who make up the hardcore hooligan group. One, on the phone in the centre, is a familiar face, Martin Fielding.
And I've known Martin for quite a few years, through football stuff and political stuff, and he's always respected on both fronts. No, he's just a game lad at football. One of the top faces up at Oldham.
Martin Fielding was also arrested and deported after rioting at Euro 2000.
Oldham's firm are called Fine Young Casuals, and there was certainly a racist element within the FYC.
The 2001 football season coincided with rising racial tension in Oldham, which some football hooligans were looking to exploit.
The Oldham lads were saying all the time that there was stuff happening that wasn't being reported, and Asians were attacking whites. White lads were fighting with Asian lads all the time. So we knew that something was going on in Oldham long before the press knew. It was no surprise to us when Oldham exploded.
It took a football match to spark it. Oldham were at home to Stoke City. There was trouble before the game as hundreds of Stoke hooligans arrived.
First I heard of it was from the Oldham lads. One of them phoned me up and said that Stoke were up here. Stoke were turned up and it's absolutely going wild with the police and everything.
Earlier that week, an Oldham pensioner, Walter Chamberlain, was mugged by 2 Asian youths. Although his family denied it was a race attack, it got national coverage, fueling unproven allegations of no-go areas for whites.
Fuck you, motherfucker!
The Stoke hooligans came to confront the Asians.
The Stoke lads called this of one of the Oldham boys and just said, look, we don't want to have it with you, we were here to have it out with the Packies because of what happened to that old guy, which was Walter Chamberlain. Like, great. They all joined up and they marched through the big Asian estate down there. They finally had the upper hand on the police, no one could control them. It was just like a free, 10-minute runaround.
As the police tried to regain control, leading members of the Oldham hooligan firm, the FYC, like this man on the left, Kevin Goff, were arrested. Once in the ground, the taunting continued. Though there was, some Stoke and Oldham supporters chanted racist abuse. Asian youths were determined to stop the hooligans going through their community after the game.
If they come here, we are not going to back down. We don't want the violence. But we are not going to back off. We're not going to hide in our houses. We are going to defend ourselves. Yes. Our families, they are scared. Yes, we are going to defend our families.
At the end of the match, some of the hooligans attempted to rush towards the Asians. A Molotov cocktail was thrown, apparently by Asian youths. The police pushed the white hooligans away. Then they attempted to disperse the Asians. But to them, it appeared the police were taking the hooligans' side.
The Oldham lads were just like euphoric about what had happened. The word started spreading around, right-wing circles. And again, people were delighted at that, and they thought, well, this is it. We'll get up next week, and we'll do it all again, and this could be the start. This could stir it all up. Let's finally have it out with the Asians once and for all. People started making phone calls from one right-wing firm to another right-wing firm, and different hooligan groups, different football teams, like Stockport were phoned, Shrewsbury, people from Man United, Chelsea, West Ham. Quite a few different clubs were phoned.
1 week later, hooligans from around the country gathered at the pub.
It was quite a scary place to be. You could just feel the tension as soon as you got into the town. When there were police around, there was white groups, there were Asian groups, there were gangs of anti-fascists walking around.
We know for a fact that there are at the moment some members of Combat 18 and other football hooligans who have wanted to come into the area to try and whip things up.
The Centurion was arranged as a venue by Oldham hooligans, among them Martin Fielding. Also present was his friend Darren Wells. Though unknown to Fielding, Wells had become an informer.
I was all for diffusing the situation, and in times gone past I'd have all been for escalating it. But I wanted out of it, and I knew that my future laid elsewhere. But I could see some people that I really cared a lot about, some good friends of mine, that were getting dragged down this path, and it was only heading one way. They were going to end up either dead or in jail.
Weeks later, at another pub, the same core group of Oldham hooligans and other right-wingers met up again. Martin Fielding was there, so was a nervous Darren Wells.
But the people just there wanted to put themselves on show by being in the junction, right on the edge of that Asian estate. It was almost the point of goading the Asians into HAFTA coming out. And then the police turned up and they blocked off the whole estate and just refused us permission to walk through that estate, which I was quite relieved about.
The heavy police presence was no accident. Unknown to Wells had been providing crucial information to the anti-fascist charity Searchlight for some time. Here, he's phoning his contact, who passes details of their movements to the Asian community and to the police.
I was just trying to keep the two groups apart, to keep the whites and the Asians apart, if you like, because that had the potential to be horrendous. Because there were some serious people from C18 and serious people from Oldham, and that could have got really out of hand.
After Wells's tip-offs, Fielding and the others can be seen walking back into town. But within hours, a fight in this road would spark serious disorder.
We decided to leave and head back to London. And then while we were driving back to London, we started getting some phone calls from the lads still up in Oldham. That a few things had happened. There'd been one of the Oldham lads, his family had been attacked. So some of the Oldham lads all went up there. Some of the Oldham football lads all went up there to defend the house, and they got in a fight with some Asians, and the whole thing escalated. And then the next thing, one of the Asian estates went up in flames.
That evening, rioting started in Glodick, a largely Asian estate. It lasted all night.
We were just stunned by it. The time I got home at 10:30 at night, put on the news, and there was pictures of Oldham burning. And I'd only been there like 3 hours before. I was glad to be at home.
Wells had been providing important information for years to his anti-fascist contacts and through them to the police. But his reaction to that night's events showed his continued ambivalence to violence.
Part of me was relieved that I was out of it and at home and wasn't going to be arrested. And then part of me was just excited, because it's just violence and sporadic violence, just unplanned, spur-of-the-moment violence. It's just the same as hooliganism.
To many hooligans, whether in Brussels, Oldham or elsewhere, the lure of violence once experienced is intense. And at Cardiff City, it was to test Sam Hammam's policy of rehabilitation in a very public way. The Cardiff City hooligans, the Soul Crew, have continued to be active this season. We filmed undercover as 100 or so were escorted by police to a match at Bristol City. Abuse was hurled at rival fans.
20 of you.
And some were organising a fight with the Bristol hooligans.
And you've got 20 boys on your right-hand side. So have a look. Just say have a look. All right, we'll have a look. All right, we'll have a look.
For some, the match at Bristol City's ground was simply a brief lull before the coming fight. What followed was depressingly inevitable. Watching nearby was one of Hammam's associates, Anis Abraham, the millionaire seen throwing a punch in Brussels. His colleague had just been in the fray. He commented on the night's events.
They had a good go then, so I give them credit. Take my ass off to them.
You're creating an atmosphere where serious problems can develop. And it's no accident that since Euro 2000, some of the most serious incidents on the mainland of Britain have been Cardiff City Club, and that the largest number of hooligans that can be turned out probably sometimes is Cardiff City Football Club.
It's the weekend after Christmas, and Bristol City fans have travelled to Cardiff's ground for the return match. Inside Ninian Park, the atmosphere was heated.
Let's go fucking Minnesota!
Cardiff fans threw coins and bottles filled with urine. Missiles were thrown back.
There are missiles being thrown throughout the game, and I'm not naive enough to know that we weren't dispatching some ourselves or throwing back what came. But again, speaking to the fans that were there, They felt they were under constant barrage of missiles.
Cardiff went 3-1 down. And the atmosphere became more vicious. Cardiff fans broke up chairs to throw at the Bristol supporters. But the Cardiff City stewards ignored both criminal offences. Instead, they shared jokes with one supporter about throwing chairs. At the end, Cardiff hooligans invited their Bristol counterparts to fight outside.
You don't go to any away ground where there's rivalry between the teams without expecting a few insults. That goes with the patch. But this went beyond that in a large way. And the sheer volume of coins, and then in the car park, the stones that were thrown around.
Police tried to clear the car park, but a mob confronted them.
Put your sticks down! Come on! Let's fucking have it!
At the front, chanting Soul Crew, was Di Thomas, the former Cardiff City footballer turned hooligan. And the Cardiff hooligans weren't afraid to attack the police. A vicious battle followed. A club photographer was knocked unconscious. Some fans tried to help him.
He's not fucking old Bill, you twat! Camera back!
Fighting spilled into the streets. Bottles and bricks were hurled. Around 100 cars were damaged. But apart from our own, there were no TV cameras, so the events were never reported. Just a week later, the national press did descend on Ninian Park to see Leeds United, then top of the Premier League, play Cardiff in the FA Cup. Hammam seemed delighted the match was being played at Cardiff's ground, comparing its atmosphere to others notorious for violence.
It's better for us to play them at Ninian because the intimidatory factor will be so big. It's a huge, huge advantage. I mean, any team that come here will tell you what the atmosphere is like. It's a bit like the old den at Millwall, except 10 times more.
If that's what he said, that's just totally irresponsible. Somebody like that, after making those comments and after seeing what's happened, shouldn't be allowed to work in football. If there is any justice in the world, then he's just totally undermined all the hard work, difficult work done by all the good football clubs, and there are plenty of those, and encouraged a lot of the worst part of football to think, hey, we're all right now, we're being supported.
On match day, many Leeds fans had little idea what awaited them.
As soon as we got in there, I could hear screaming, shouting. It was just a complete atmosphere of tension, that's where I'd put it. It was just horrible.
Before kick-off, Hammam went to the visiting supporters' end with his bodyguard, the convicted hooligan. He raised a placard saying, "Welcome Leeds." Coins were thrown back. Some Cardiff fans hurled abuse.
The Cardiff fans were extremely close to us as well. I thought, oh, I don't like this. This is a bit scary. And also within minutes, there was things being thrown. We had coins coming over and bottles and all sorts of things. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, oh, they're going to stop that in a minute. They're going to go in and they're going to stop it. But they didn't. There was bottles coming over, screwed up tin cans like this, so they were very sharp. They were being thrown. I got hit at least 5 times by coins.
After an early Leeds goal, Cardiff equalised. Leeds fans were pelted with bottles and coins, as was the referee. The match was briefly stopped.
One man came over to us with a little boy. He said, "I'm being hit from that side." I said, "Stand next to me because I've been hit at least 5 times." And he said, "Well, what am I going to do?" This little boy was really crying. He was upset. He was terrified.
And into this maelstrom, Hammam stepped forward again, walking past the Leeds fans with his bodyguard. Again he was pelted. With minutes to go, Cardiff scored their winning goal. An incredible act of giant killing. Some Leeds hooligans attempted to break out of the ground to confront Cardiff supporters. But the police line held. Cardiff fans wanted to join their chairman on the pitch.
When the final whistle went, we could see all the Cardiff fans just jumping over the fences, jumping over the barriers, and then finally they opened the gates and just let them out.
Many went straight for the Leeds end. A mass brawl with Leeds fans was only averted by the fact that Ninian Park still has fencing, and by a forceful police intervention.
It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. All sorts of kids crying, screaming. It was just terrifying.
As missiles flew between both sides, outside some children were leaving in tears. The Leeds fans were furious.
You can fuck all about it.
Sorry, love. So would I, love. So would I. I've got my son as well. Right, you sort your fucking lot out.
And once again, the tension threatened to spill into more violence. Others had more serious injuries.
Hey? She was just going to get on the bus. I was at the first bus. A brick come and smashed her on there.
If that happened at Leeds, we'll be kicked out at league. But you're a joke. If this is Cardiff, if this is hospitality, shove it up your arse.
One radio reporter tried to interview Sam Hammam.
I wanted to know what he thought of the scenes on the final whistle, and it became pretty clear at the start of that interview that he didn't wish to condemn that behaviour. I challenged him on this, continued to challenge him throughout the course of the interview. When Sam Hammam closed the interview, after I'd interrupted him for the final time, he took my tape recorder, gave it to one of his security officials, who then ushered me down the tunnel. When I got to the entrance to reception, I was grabbed by my coat and flung quite forcefully out of the gates of Ninian Park.
5 days after the match, and still stung by the mass media outcry, Hammam called a meeting of the club's core supporters. In the audience, Anis Abraham the millionaire and John Simmons. Cardiff City's owner was here to rally the troops.
All this media campaign, this vile and evil and lying, I mean, they're really trying to come after the club and after me. Has this been good for the club? It has been great.
He accepted that his club had a hooligan problem and that Cardiff fans who threw missiles should be rooted out. But he felt the media had unfairly singled out the club, that the Leeds fans were worse. He turned it into low comedy.
There were a lot of empty plastic bottles. One threw a cigarette lighter, and one threw his fucking shoes. So, can they charge us with anything? With what? And if they say there was violence and I incited violence, I'm asking you, what fucking violence? Who hit who after the game? Who fought who? There was no violence. I didn't incite anything. These people will come, they are with us. Now, we have been set up.
Then he referred to John Simmons, known as Simo.
We should be whiter than white. Just as an example. Simo, where are you, Simo? He's going to join the carol. He's going to start singing Christmas carols.
Don't sing anyway.
Hammam tacitly acknowledged Simmons' role in trouble by asking him to keep his nose clean from now on. At the end, the club's chief executive is filmed in deep discussion with John Simmons and with Anis Abraham. The next day, Sam Hammam went on the offensive, launching what he described as his war on violence at the club.
Thank you very much.
Some are not convinced.
Thank you for coming. You take care. Right.
What I'm saying is that's the words, where's the action? And in my experience, in the time I was here in Cardiff, I saw very little action, albeit sometimes a few words. Where does Sam Hammam coming from? What is his view? I mean, why is he so closely involved with these groups?
Cardiff City has condemned hooliganism on several occasions, mainly after the Leeds match when it launched a fans' charter to report, then ban for life, those seen throwing objects inside the ground. But this spring at the official Cardiff Club shop, you can buy a copy of a new book. It's a historical celebration of the Cardiff hooligans, the Soul Crew.
Have you got a copy of the Soul Crew book? No.
At first it's hard to get, but it's available from the manager.
How much is it? 8. Nice. So why are you selling behind the counter though?
Can't sell them really.
Why's that?
Well, because of the shit that's in there, basically.
Really?
It's not, you know, it's a good read. I've had a read of it. There's nothing heavy, but it's just the club don't want to be seen to be selling that type of thing because it glorifies the violence and all the rest of it.
But the club are okay to sell it though?
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course they are, yes. You know, perfectly legit.
The book that Cardiff City are selling is written by a Soul Crew hooligan, Tony Rivers, who we've seen active this season.
Give it a fucking stood there, like we went over to them, bang bang, they were gone. Run back into the escort, like funny as fuck.
Far from being whiter than white, John Simmons is still trying to confront other supporters. We've filmed him with other Cardiff hooligans, looking for Chesterfield fans at an away fixture in March.
Yeah, come on, let's get back up here. I'm telling you, that's their pub up there, that's the pub. Don't run, walk.
There were clashes before and after the game. Di Thomas, the ex-Cardiff City footballer, was jailed after the Cardiff Leeds match. He'd run onto the pitch and thrown missiles. He's banned from football grounds for 6 years. And Darren Wells, once of Combat 18, is now abroad, hiding from his former friends.
It's obviously had a detrimental effect on my life. What's done's done, isn't it? You've got to stand by that. But I don't know what people would do if there was no football. If they took away football, people would just start following something else. People would go off at cricket or something. It's just, you can't ever lose it.
On the 1st of December 2010, supporters of Aston Villa and Birmingham City clashed at St Andrew's Stadium after a second City derby match in the League Cup, and 14 people were injured. Missiles were hurled onto the pitch, a rocket flare was released in the stands, and there were scuffles in the nearby street. The use of bother boots in football hooliganism was countered in 2012 by warnings to fans that they would have to remove such boots in order to attend football matches. Bother boots is a type of boot that has been associated with violence. Such boots are generally sturdy design and may be steel toe-capped. They have been considered as offensive weapons used by hooligans for kicking opponents while street fighting. The boots became known in the late 1960s in the United Kingdom and continue to be a fashion statement associated with rebellion. The term bother in the UK developed as a fronting slam, probably Cockney for brother, and was used in connection with aggro or aggressive behaviour by skinheads and hooligans in the late 1960s. Heavy steel toe-cap boots were stereotypically worn by skinheads and were termed as bother boots. Initially, heavy black army surplus boots were worn, but later, yellow stitched Dr. Martens were adopted as the boot of choice. In a match between Sheffield Wednesday and Leeds United on the 19th of October 2012, Leeds United hooligan Aaron Corley attacked Sheffield Wednesday goalkeeper Chris Kirkland during a pitch invasion to celebrate a goal. The hooligan was identified on social media sites as someone who had previously been banned from every football ground in the UK. At a semi-final match of the 2012-2013 FA Cup between Millwall and Wigan Athletic at the new Wembley Stadium on the 13th of April 2013, Millwall fans fought amongst themselves, although it is believed that a group of Wigan supporters got into the Millwall end. 14 arrests were made. The very next day, Newcastle United fans rioted when their team lost 3-0 to Sunderland in the time-wear derby match in the Premier League. Bottles were thrown, bins were set on fire, and a horse was punched as mounted officers tried to move back crowds to allow visiting fans to be escorted away. 29 arrests were made during the game itself. On the 7th of March 2015, during a quarter-final match of the FA Cup between rival clubs from the West Midlands, Aston Villa and West Bromwich Albion, hundreds of Villa fans invaded the pitch whilst the game was still in play. A further invasion took place at full time, causing players from both teams to flee the pitch. Despite police officers and stewards' best efforts to restrain the fans, it is believed almost 1,000 fans entered the pitch. On that very same day, just 21 miles away, a group of Wolverhampton Wanderers hooligans clashed with Watford FC hooligans, one who spent 3 weeks in a coma. 4 teenagers were jailed, and 2 more received suspended sentences. In his autobiography, Undesirables, Colin Blaney, a high-ranking member of the Manchester United's intercity jibbers firm, claimed that one of the main developments in the 2010s was that football hooligans were no longer involved in acquisitive crimes overseas, whereas they had once stolen designer clothing from abroad and used international games as an excuse to loot jewellery shops on the continent. The football firms of today solely engaged in profit-orientated forms of crime within the UK. Northern Irish football suffered a major setback in 1948 when the supporters of Linfield invaded the pitch after a match against Belfast Celtic, attacking and seriously injuring 3 Celtic players. A historical rivalry between Linfield and Glentoran has escalated somewhat in recent years. There were riots in 2005 and in Boxing Day in 2008. In the 1970s, the political troubles in Northern Ireland spilled onto the terraces of football stadiums. This is seen as a major factor in the Derry City leaving the Irish Football League to join the League of Ireland. On the day of the UEFA Euro 2020 final between Italy and England, riots broke out on the entrance to Wembley Stadium and in Piccadilly Circus, Leicester Square and Trafalgar Square. 86 people were arrested by the police that day. Rangers and Celtic have the most committed fans in Britain. Their following has not only sporting but religious significance. Rangers represent the city's Protestant faction, and Celtic players are the idols of the Catholics. Today's incidents are usual when the teams meet and the police always try to keep their respective fractions apart on the terraces segregated in stadiums. One of the first recorded incidents of large-scale crowd violence took place after the 1909 match between Rangers and the Celtic. The Glaswegian clubs clashed at Hampden Park at the 1969 Scottish Cup final, with 50 arrests reported on the terrace relating to fighting and the throwing of objects onto the pitch. More arrests followed after the post-match fighting between the supporters and the police. Worse violence took place in the aftermath of the 1980 Scottish Cup final between the Celtic and the Rangers. Hundreds of fans from both sides invaded the playing field after full time and fought a pitch battle with one another. TV commentator Andy McPherson likened the riot to a scene out of Apocalypse. adding, "At the end of the day, let's not kid ourselves. These supporters absolutely hate one another." In the aftermath of the clash, an Act of Parliament was passed that banned the sale of alcoholic beverages within Scottish sports grounds. By the 1980s, the casual manifestation of football hooliganism was adopted by the fans of many clubs in Scotland, with Aberdeen being the first club with a casual following, and the established skinhead/punk hooligan elements, Hearts and Rangers, that had dominated prior to this, were then challenged by the casual firms, or mobs as they were more popularly known in Scotland. Casual firms were attached to clubs such as St Mirren, who had the Love Street division, Clyde, which had Shawfield Shed End Boys, Aberdeen, which had the Aberdeen Soccer Casuals, Dundee and Dundee United, which had the Dundee Utility, Hibernian, which had the Capital City Service, Morton, which had the Morton Soccer Crew, Motherwell, which had the Saturday Service, Patrick Thistle, which had the North Glasgow Express, Falkirk, which had Fear, and the Dunfermline Athletic, which had the Carnegie Soccer Service. Aberdeen, under the Aberdeen Soccer Casuals ASC, became the best known.
But surrender or you'll die, for we are the Victimberry Boys, Berry Boys.
The Billy Boys, a song sung by generations of Protestants in Scotland. It refers to the murder of Irish Catholics in battles 400 years ago. Glasgow Rangers fans sing it to antagonise their rivals Glasgow Celtic. This is no ordinary football rivalry. It's the result of deep religious division. Celtic's traditional support is Catholic and Rangers Protestant. We filmed with paramedics and hospital staff after last weekend's Rangers and Celtic game. Most of the injuries you see in this programme were filmed on just that one night. This man was attacked several hours after the match.
I'm a regular at Celtic and Rangers games. Regular. I get a ticket usually every game. This week I decided not watch a game in the pub with my pals. This is what happens. Just makes you wonder, know what I mean? There was sectarian stuff, no? Turned round. That was it. Didn't need to say anything. My teeth kicked in. My hand jumped on. What's that all about? People getting put in hospital because of what team they support. What's going on in this country?
Rangers and Celtic are known as the Old Firm. They're among the top 20 richest football clubs in the world. One city, two footballing giants, and a rivalry which stems historically from the religious conflicts between Protestant Ulster and Catholic Ireland.
We've got a small, very small section of the fan base that I think we would rather not have associated with the club, who are sectarian attitudes. But I think you have to see that in context, historical context in particular. I think we've made enormous strides in dealing with that, trying to prevent it in the first case and to eradicate it in the second case. So our policy is very clear. We discourage sectarian behaviour in any form.
Do you believe that you do have a sectarian fan base?
Very small, and I think it would be wrong of me and crass of me to deny there is not some unacceptable fans who support our club. But I genuinely believe it's a minority, it's improving, but we should never be complacent, and hopefully that one day it can be totally eradicated.
This perception of the scale of the problem isn't shared by those who work in A&E.
people who don't understand it, down south it would probably be like if you had an all-black team and an all-white team, and the all-black team were only supported by blacks and the all-white supported by whites, and that's the only way you could really explain it, where there was that type of violence out in the street. That's what it's like up here. It's not colour of skin, it's a religion.
It's an analogy shared by one of the few journalists in Scotland to have openly criticised the clubs for failing to tackle the issue.
I've tried this line out on some of the more bigoted members of the Rangers and Celtic support, and they don't get it. You say, you know these phrases that you enjoy, these shouts and these chants you enjoy, dirty orange bastard, dirty Fenian bastard. Imagine if it was actually dirty black bastard, there's no doubt about it. If it was rank racism as opposed to rank bigotry, I think it would have been cured long ago, because we would never have accepted it. It would have been just too embarrassing.
This is the sound of racism in football.
Football's world governing body, FIFA, has demanded an explanation from the Spanish authorities for the racist abuse directed at England's black players during last night's match in Madrid.
It's only a few months since there was international condemnation of this behaviour. But no such condemnation for singing such as this. Rangers fans baiting their Celtic rivals only last week. In fact, as we travelled to games across Scotland this year, we heard the same songs and chants over and over again. The Billy Boys, clearly the Rangers fans' favourite. But these fans could now be arrested for singing this song. Since June 2003, sectarianism in Scotland has been outlawed. If someone commits an offence, such as an assault or uses abusive language, and it's based on religious prejudice, it's now treated as a sectarian crime. 450 people have been arrested in the first 14 months of the law. But sectarianism goes well beyond what we see on the terraces. It's 11 o'clock on a cold Saturday morning in January. This is a Republican march to commemorate Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland in 1972.
That's a flag of your country. We fucking hate yous!
These are scenes you might expect to see on the streets of Belfast or Londonderry. But this is Glasgow, 2005.
At about 1800, Scotland was overwhelmingly a Protestant nation. Then the Great Migration started from Ireland. Probably 250,000 first-generation Irish in Scotland by the end of the 19th century. The important point to remember is that this is not simply a movement of Catholic Irish, because Scotland's Irish came from the north of Ireland. There was a substantial minority also of Protestant people. So to some extent, the north of Ireland's traditional tribal divides, tribal conflicts, were, if you like, transferred to Irish ambassador to the UK attending his first Old Firm match. He thought he was at an international game, because on one side of the park, the Irish tricolour, the Republic of Ireland, on the other side, the Red Hand of Ulster. It was almost, if you like, a metaphor for the fact that Irish problems had been transferred onto Scottish soil.
This Rangers fan was attacked in the street after last weekend's Old Firm game by two men whom he says were wearing Celtic.
They say Chris had no chance, no a chance to put you down or anything like that. The boy just took a swipe at him and he cut Chris.
If it would be an inch under, I'd have killed him. An inch below, they said it would have killed him, would have been dead.
See, this is the kind of things we're talking about. This is... How would you feel? How would you feel if it was one of your sons or daughters or one of your mates?
A fan was shot and badly injured today with a crossbow bolt on the city's south side.
A teenager who murdered his next-door neighbour by stabbing him 150 times for wearing a Celtic strip.
Detectives appealed for witnesses to the attack. Police insider said there was little doubt it was a potentially murderous attack on the supporter.
For generations, Scotland has been in denial about this problem of sectarianism. For God's sake, it's 200 years old. It is actually embedded very strongly within the culture, particularly the culture of the west of Scotland. And so it's so familiar, it's so routine, that people don't actually think, or have not thought until recently, it's a big issue. It's a fact of life. It's part of the way of life of the society.
But now, for the first time in generations, there are moves on the political front to tackle sectarianism. Taking the initiative is Jack McConnell, Scotland's first minister. He described religious bigotry as Scotland's secret shame, upsetting a lot of people.
If people think that it's wrong that I've got a wife who was brought up in a Catholic family, or they think it's wrong that I am not a Catholic, then they're the ones that are wrong. We should be living in a kind of country where people have got freedom of expression and an understanding of each other, and these sort of attitudes just strengthen my resolve, they don't diminish it.
Organisations, including the leaders of Scotland's main churches, schools, the Orange Order, and both Rangers and Celtic, gathered together to debate tackling the issue of religion. This unprecedented meeting of minds was chaired by Jack McConnell, the First Minister.
I don't want people to be ashamed of their traditions, but when that spills over into hatred of another religion, hatred of another community, then that is what is wrong. And it's the public expression of offensive behaviour, the public expression of offensive language, offensive marching, the public hatred of others, and the encouragement in younger generations to feel that way too, that I think is most offensive in Scotland, and that is what we have to change.
Another victim of the violence which so often occurs on the day of Old Firm matches. His injuries weren't serious, but over the last 10 years, it's estimated there have been at least 10 sectarian murders linked to Old Firm rivalry, and in that time, hundreds of assaults.
It's based on prejudice, it's based on ignorance, it's based on pure badness. But whether it's because you wear a particular football top, or because you wear a particular faith, or because you're a particular colour, these some things for reasonable people like you and I, and the vast majority of people in the United Kingdom, it's very, very difficult to understand.
If you were a Martian and you came upon the setting of Rangers or Celtic on a Saturday afternoon, if you were suddenly parachuted into Ibrox and you heard this going on, you heard the venom, you heard the rancid chanting, you heard the ignorant, uneducated, prejudiced sentiment that came from the terracings, you really would think, God, this is a savage society.
This is Polmont Young Offenders Institution. It holds some of Scotland's most violent young men. Many are from backgrounds where sectarian values are actively encouraged. Among them are die-hard Celtic and Rangers fans.
I started to understand maybe when I was about 10 what the words meant. Catholics and Protestants divided that used like obscene words against the Protestants.
Such as?
Started to like Protestant scum and dirty orange bastards and all that, which drums that into your head, and that's the way you begin to feel yourself.
At the age of 10?
At the age of 10, aye.
My first ever memory was going to visit my uncle in prison and getting a Rangers top off him. That's the only memory I can remember. That drumming into my head about Rangers, how to hate the Fenians Celtic.
Whether my team won, drew or lost, I would come out and I would end up going and picking a fight with Rangers, a guy with Rangers tap on.
Was that because they were Rangers or was that because they were Protestant?
Rangers and Protestants.
Tell you the truth, I didn't really know what Fenian meant at the time, but I took it on board anyway, because you're going to take on board what your uncles and that are saying, you know what I mean, because it's like your elders.
When you used to read about fans being attacked or murdered after games, and you read that it was maybe a Rangers fan it had happened to, what would you think?
Nothing. I used to think, good, one less Rangers fan.
One less Protestant?
One less of them to go supporting it at the ground. Whereas if I read if it was a Celtic fan, I'd be like, dirty Protestant scum, you know what I mean? Bastards. For doing that to one of us.
Deeply ingrained attitudes make life difficult for those who deal with the aftermath of an Old Firm match. Call-outs to paramedics can increase by up to 66%. The vast majority, violent or drunken assaults between opposing fans. Staff often experience the sectarian hatred firsthand.
Our nurses wear blue, our doctors wear green, some surgeons wear blue, and this may not be the colour of choice of the individuals being be treated, and it might be an endless argument to calm them down, sort them out just so you can treat them. So an injury takes 5 minutes to stitch, it's an hour, and it's 3 persons trying to calm this guy down.
Yeah, people do sometimes take great exception to inane little things like that, and you know, it's totally absurd. I think anyone outside the west of Scotland just wouldn't understand it at all, but it's been like that, you know, certainly the whole of my life that I can remember.
Yeah.
Rangers and Celtic may just be football clubs, but like it or not, they've been put at the heart of this very public sectarian debate. Being in the media spotlight hasn't always been easy. Paul Gascoigne celebrates a Rangers goal by imitating a loyalist flute band. Donald Finlay, high-profile barrister and vice-chairman of Rangers, leading sectarian singing. Celtic manager Martin O'Neill endorsing an anti-sectarian initiative.
You personally think you can do anything at Celtic Park to stop it, the singing, the sectarian chanting from the stands?
Who?
You. Could you make an appeal to people who do this, to tell them to stop it?
Well, I know you're asking me, could I make an appeal? Do you think that would be heard if we were 3-0 down at home in a game? That might be quite difficult. You know, I would say that the chanting would probably be levelled at me, to be perfectly honest. You know?
You want to sidestep this issue, really, is it?
Pardon?
You want to sidestep it at the ground? That's what I'm saying, that there is sectarian chanting going on at the ground, but you don't want to address it yourself personally.
You're asking me that question?
I'm asking that question.
Are you?
If it's an issue for you as a manager with fans chanting sectarian songs, do you think you should be addressing that problem?
Well, you tell me then. All right.
I'm asking the question.
No, but you've obviously got an answer to it, so you'd let me know.
I don't have an answer. You're the manager of the football.
I don't have an answer either.
Celtic manager Martin O'Neill's claim that his midfield player, Neil Lennon, was a victim of racist and sectarian abuse during Saturday's Old Firm game.
3 years later, and for Mr. O'Neill, things now seem a little clearer.
He was verbally abused in a racial and sectarian manner.
And the Rangers manager's response today to the accusations?
I'm here only to talk about the Austria game, so if there are any other questions, I'll refuse to answer them.
The dilemma is how to break the generational cycle of bigotry and violence. Both clubs invest in educational projects. These children are from Catholic and Protestant schools across the city. For them, a tour around the stadiums and the chance to meet some of their heroes. For the clubs, it's an opportunity for them to tackle attitudes on religious bigotry within the next generation of fans.
Hands up if you're a football fan then. OK, so lots of football fans around.
Children don't
are not really sectarianism, because they usually just get on with their friends and that, even if they do support Rangers Celtic. It's like probably teenagers and adults.
The project ends with the children, a mix of Rangers and Celtic fans, watching the Old Firm game together.
The really important thing is that whatever else you do, when you're travelling to the match, nobody will wear their football colours. Your football colours you can bring with you. You have them in a bag that you cannot see through, right? Now, why do you think we do that? Okay, Charlie. So there's no fights, right? Whatever we've talked about, whatever we've covered in these 2 days, what is really clear is that the Old Firm match, the atmosphere in the city is going to be quite high.
Inevitably, sectarianism has spawned its own language. Words and names used to antagonise and provoke. This alphabet was compiled by these 12-year-olds.
A, aggression. B, bigotry and bitter. Bullying. C, Celtic, clueless.
D, discrimination. F, Fenian.
An Irish Republican revolutionary. In Scotland, though, it's used as a derogatory term for a Catholic.
Hate, hatred, Hun.
A 4th century tribe of Asian warriors. In the First World War, slang for Germans. In Scotland, a disparaging term for a Protestant, a Rangers supporter.
R, religion. T, Tim.
Tim wasn't in the Oxford Dictionary, but in Glasgow it's a Catholic, usually accompanied by an expletive. But would people find words like these offensive?
I'm going to give you a list of words. You just tell me when you find some of them offensive and tell me why. Okay. Fenian.
Aye, that's offensive.
Fenian.
That's not very nice.
Tim.
That's not very nice either.
Tim.
That would be offensive.
Tim.
To me, that's just a Celtic supporter. I don't know what it means.
Tim. Well, that doesn't really worry me. I mean, a Tim, to my mind, is the same as a jock as a Scotsman.
Hun.
Oh, no, no.
Hun.
It's just a Rangers supporter. I don't know what it means.
Oh, no, I don't like the word Hun. Why should you call it, why should you even call a German a Hun? It's not a very nice expression at all.
But the provocation isn't confined to religious abuse. Celtic fans have a striking line in political songs. A particular favourite is The Boys of the Old Brigade.
When you come to games at Celtic Park now, you will have to listen very hard to hear any song sung which have got religious content, which are indications of religious bigotry or intolerance. It doesn't happen.
But what about the songs with political overtones? Boys of the Old Brigade?
We don't like that. We think it's got nothing to do with Celtic Football Club. We have no political affiliation of any kind at all. We think it's out of place at Celtic Park.
Last week, a number of fans were clearly heard on live television, disrupting a minute's silence for victims of September the 11th.
IRA chants could be clearly heard.
And it was those songs that led the chief executive to send a letter saying, this is no place in our club, we don't want it. We will not defend them. We think they're doing the wrong thing and we want to discourage them from coming to Celtic Park.
Just a week after the strongly worded letter was sent to fans, the same political songs could be heard again.
The game's now 20 minutes old and Celtic have scored their first goal. The fans have barely stopped singing for the whole of the match, and the words IRA could clearly be heard in the first 5 minutes, sending a note of defiance to the Celtic board.
Both clubs argue, although they've some control over their home support, fans travel to away fixtures that it becomes more difficult.
People who go to the away games and who are more numerous, certainly noisier at the away games than at the home games, are not season ticket holders. Now, you can withdraw a season ticket if the person owns one. If they don't own a season ticket, there is limitations to what you can do.
So what can you do? Nothing, it seems.
You can work with the other clubs. You could try and assist them before the match day. You can have a relationship with the local police. You can send stewards to the ground to try and make sure there's the good behaviour. But as I say, the responsibility for conduct inside the ground is ultimately that of the home team.
Today, the Irish rebel songs still continue. This is Celtic's away support filmed by us in the first 2 months of this year. Rangers fans too have a way of using expressions of extreme political beliefs to provoke the other side. We filmed these fans repeatedly making Nazi salutes and singing sectarian songs.
I think that we have some singing that is unacceptable, we have some actions that are unacceptable, and we're working hard at all times to endeavour to eradicate that.
Have you seen the salute that they made?
No, not specifically, no.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Every game I've been to,
Maybe you're looking for it.
There's been hundreds of fans.
I go to the football match to watch the football, and if an incident's reported to me, I can comment on it, but I don't see these things, no.
Many will tell you that they're not really doing a Nazi salute, there's somebody they're doing a red hand of Ulster, which is another argument for another day about trying to keep the United Kingdom united and all sorts of problems with Northern Ireland. But the vast majority of them are 90-minute bigots. I wouldn't believe for 1 minute that all the numbers that do that are real bigots or real racists.
What would be the message to the fans who, on Sunday's game, stood in the terraces in their thousands and sang the most offensive, vile, hateful songs and chants, out and out religious hatred? What will you say to those fans?
I would say sing your songs by all means, but if you put an anecdote of religion or bad language or stuff like that, I say it's totally unacceptable.
Did you hear these fans?
Of course I did. I'm not denying, but I think that...
Are you not ashamed of them?
No, what I've said is it's totally unacceptable.
Are you not ashamed of them, though?
I wouldn't use the word ashamed, I'd just say it's totally unacceptable. I think that there's no place for that in society today.
There is a very phony debate going on among some supporters who try to justify their chanting. I met a member recently of the Rangers Supporters Trust, a supposedly progressive, modern, forward-thinking fans movement. Well, you know, he said, the Fenian word, you know, you have to understand its political context. I said, look, do not insult my intelligence and your intelligence by pretending that the vast ranks of the Rangers fans who are singing Dirty Fenian Bastard are all mid-19th century political historians who are concerned with political dissent in Ireland. Of course they're not. By Fenian, they mean Catholic, and that's what they mean.
Another young victim caught up in the bloody aftermath of last week's Old Firm game.
He'd been in a pub watching the game somewhere else, had walked along the street, come to another pub to meet his friends, and a fight had broken out within the pub, and he'd had a broken glass put in his eye. There's a lot of violence after an Old Firm game. You could be lucky, you're lucky to get home if you're wearing a particular colour, intact. It's as simple as that.
Soldiers are we, whose lives are pledged to Ireland. Some have come from a land beyond the way.
But the games that I've been in have been the best adrenaline buzz you could, not one drug could experience the adrenaline for it, you know what I mean? You just get that much high. That's how I think there's that many murders and stabbings and all the rest of it, because you're leaving the games in such a high. You're not really thinking about the consequences before you go and do something.
Are you surprised by the level of violence? after these football games?
Not really, no. No very stuff that gets shouted at each other.
We'll chant a soldier's song. It is old, but it is beautiful, and its colours they are fine. It was worn.
I hate it. I hate it. It gets us really mad. That's how people get hurt. That's how people end up getting murdered. That's a cause of it. They come out of the grounds, it hates building up in you, you're getting really, really mad, and it gets to the stage where you're saying to yourself, if first Rangers fan I see, I'm just going to run up, header him.
The sash my father wore.
Rangers is the only club in Scotland to have set up a sectarianism and racism monitoring group. We were invited to one of their fortnightly meetings. One of the items on the agenda was a debrief on the Old Firm game in January, which we'd secretly filmed at.
Policy of plainclothes stewards. Broadly speaking, I'm pleased to say that the behaviour was very good.
Well, admittedly there was no violence, but could this really have been the same game that we attended? We managed to capture on camera numerous Rangers supporters giving Nazi salutes and singing sectarian songs.
I have said on many, many occasions that I don't think we really have a huge racist problem in the west of Scotland. I don't think we have a huge sectarian problem, but we do sometimes have a problem of big mouth, and that's what the 90-minute bigot tends to be, is someone who's shouting something loud, but that it doesn't really mean it.
Well, I think when a young man can have his throat cut and bleed to death just because of the colour of a scarf or a top he's wearing, that's not 90-minute bigotry. That's a lifetime of bigotry and several generations of bigotry just demonstrating itself, and it's certainly not just a 90-minute episode.
That's it in a nutshell, really.
The violent aftermath of the Old Firm match last week pushed crisis-hit hospitals to the verge.
One nurse said that Sunday night, like any other Old Firm day, was like a bloodbath. Statistics just...
A spokesman said the incidents after Saturday's game were horrendous and show once again the desperate need for urgent action.
What action would you take against a fan who's been deemed to be singing or chanting something which is unacceptable in the club's eyes, something sectarian?
We pursue it as vigorously as the law permits. If that points us toward a season ticket holder or a supporter who's been, first of all, charged with sectarian behaviour, we suspend his entry to the ground, take away his season ticket. And if he's convicted of sectarian behaviour, we can take away the ticket, and we do so, and that's an indefinite suspension.
How many people have you taken that action against?
This year, one, because, as I said, only one conviction has been achieved in the courts of sectarian behaviour. Have you lived in Glasgow 20, 30, 40 years ago? There were hundreds of arrests at games, and fighting would break out in the terracing, and bottles would be thrown. Now, measured in an historical context, I think we've made very, very considerable strides, and it's Celtic's policy to continue with that effort to try and reduce and, if possible, eliminate sectarian behaviour at Celtic Park.
For 7 years, Rangers have been collecting data on their own offending fans.
We've given 14 life bans, 110 told not to come back, and there's been over 1,200 warnings. We're working at it.
How many of those numbers were banned or identified for sectarian behaviour?
I cannot be specific on that because you'd have to ask Lawrence that, who I believe you've interviewed.
I've asked him and he can't answer that question either.
Well, if you want us to go and find out before you put this programme, we'll give you the exact number, but I'm sure there was a vast majority would be of that.
Do you think it would be worth it for the club to actually try and find out the scale of the problem by trying to identify how many of these fans have committed these
Well, I think I've
offences?
already said to you, we're working around the clock. We can only do so much. It's not just a problem with Rangers and Celtic or football in general. It's a social situation that has been in Scotland for years, which I think has been overblown up.
We asked again for the number of fans penalised by the club for sectarian behaviour. They couldn't establish this, they said, because of data protection. This 16-year-old boy was attacked by Celtic fans as he stood at a bus stop near his home after last week's game.
We've just had a chap there, a young boy, 16, who to the outside world looks like a Rangers fan. He's wearing red, white and blue from top to toe, And when we uncovered him to expose and examine him, he's wearing a Celtic top underneath. Now that wouldn't have been seen by a passerby, but he's absolutely determined it's a supporters issue. He thinks he was attacked because of the colours he wears.
Policing last weekend's Old Firm match was a major operation. With 60,000 fans expected to attend, it's treated as a Category A major incident. There'll be more than 500 officers involved in policing it. Now they also have the added burden of having to enforce the new law on bigotry.
People often refer to this 90-minute bigot. Well, whether you're a 90-minute bigot or a bigot 24 hours a day, if you come and commit a religious prejudice crime at a football match, our view, my view, is that you should be arrested, and that's the stance we've taken. We cannot just simply say too many people are doing it, it's too hard, I'm going to turn a blind eye. We have to go in and take some form of action, and I suppose perhaps go for those who are the worst offenders, those who are the most obvious, those who are the most outrageous, those who are the ringleaders, and that type of thing.
And you come and take your seats.
One group of football fans who won't see any of this are the 30 youngsters from the Sense Over Sectarianism project. They change into their team strips after they arrive at the stadium because it's too dangerous for them to travel in their colours. They're also segregated from the crowd for their own safety and watch the game in one of the club's canteens.
It's been a fairly typical morning for an Old Firm match. There's been 2 arrests so far.
And what were they arrested for?
For a breach of the peace with a religious prejudice attached to that.
And that was already this morning?
Yeah, just in the stadium, just before kick-off, yeah.
And do you anticipate there'll be many more?
Well, I hope not. I hope everybody listens to what the clubs have told them.
We are the Valley Boys!
In total, there were 30 arrests after the game. 12 for sectarian offences, 1 for racism.
You can either sit on your backside and do nothing about it and accept that nothing will ever change, or you can try and change attitudes, but encouraging the next generation, because that's the real focus here, the next generation, a different set of attitudes. It's far more tolerant and understanding, and therefore reduces the amount of violence and intimidation that takes place.
The political will is there, so too is the law. But what of the clubs? How they exercise their considerable influence over their support could be a major factor in determining when Scotland will finally be rid of its secret shame.
You have the drama of the game itself and the atmosphere. And yes, if you ignore the specific sentiment, if you ignore the bigoted vocabulary, yes, it's an exciting environment. But my point is, down the nexus chain, there is death at the end of it. You have the passion, you have the tribalism, you have the aggro out in the street, you have the policing, you have the fighting, and down the line, you have tragedy.
What kind of assaults have you seen this evening?
At least 1, 2, 3 people have been slashed in the face. A barmaid who was injured got caught in the crossfire. So there are a mixture of people who've been picked out because they're an obvious sectarian target, and other people are just innocent bystanders, people even just at the work and injured.
Now, it's still quite early, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You've obviously been on shift for a number of hours, but you've got the rest of the night. How do you expect the evening to pan out?
Well, it's difficult to give precise figures. We've got a list here from the computer, and we know we've had 14 assaults in before midnight. And that's a high number for a weekend. There are also 21 other injuries. Once again, that's a profile of 20 to 40-year-old males. So there could be assaults that have been hidden. At the end of the day, you could be talking about 40 patients have all come here as a result of sectarian problems.
From the 1980s onwards, Aberdeen's ASC and Hibernian's CCS became the most feared casuals in Scotland. the CCF had gained particular notoriety. From the 2000s, hooliganism had declined in Scotland, but Aberdeen, Dundee Utility, Celtic, Hibernian, Hearts, Motherwell, Patrick Thistle, Airdrie, St Mirren and Rangers still have a number of hooligans. While the Scotland's national team's travelling supporters, the Tartan Army, are not generally violent these days, hooliganism does occur in other areas of Scottish football. Pre-arranged fights between firms on match days mostly take place away from the football grounds. Most Scottish football fans are against this behaviour, and authorities have taken several measures to reduce football hooliganism. Celtic and the Rangers are two of the biggest teams in Scotland, and the Old Firm rivalry is one of the most heated football rivalries in the world. The Old Firm rivalry is largely motivated by religious sectarianism and is related to the conflict between the Loyalists and the Republicans in Northern Ireland. Rangers' hooligan element, the IFC, have strong rivalry with Celtic's CSC and Aberdeen's ASC, with Celtic being their traditional cultural enemy. They have also had major clashes with Motherwell, Hibs, Patrick Thistle and Dundee's Utility. At the 2008 UEFA Cup final, when Rangers reached the final, Rangers fans and the ICF rioted in Manchester with huge media spotlight. The oldest rivalry in Scotland is between the Hibernian and the Heart of Midlothian, and contained a sectarian hatred from the outset, as the Hibernian were initially an Irish Catholics only club, and the Hearts represented the Scottish Protestant establishment. However, this aspect of the rivalry is now almost non-existent. At the first ever match between the Heart of Midlothian and Hibernian on Christmas Day 1875, the Hibs fans chased the Hearts captain, Tom Purdy, after allegations of foul play, and since then, the rivalry has escalated into more serious crowd trouble at virtually every game between them over the next 15 years. This continued as an issue between the clubs and the fans indefinitely. In European competitions, the CCS also had clashes with the Belgian Hooligans and local residents in 1989 and in 1992. In 2005, they clashed in Ukraine against the Ukrainian Hooligans. The Hibernian CCS story has been told in books such as These Colours Don't Run and Hibs Boy, and many stories have been told online by former notable members. During the Euros 96, the CCF, along with Celtic's CSC, Dundee's Utility, Patrick Thistle's NGE, Motherwell's SS, St Mirren's LSD and Aberdeen's ASC, organised a well publicised fight with Chelsea, Millwall, Rangers and RD's B section hooligans in the centre of Trafalgar Square. This incident attracted worldwide media attention, with footage of both sets of casuals attacking each other and the police. In the 2000s, Aberdeen Soccer Casuals, the ASC, had clashes in England at Bradford and Hartlepool and also in Europe. On the 6th of January 2007, came to Airdrie in the 2006-2007 Scottish Cup, with fighting breaking out on the main street. Cardiff City's hooligan firm, the Soul Crew, has been involved in full-scale riots since the 1970s. In January 2002, Leeds United and Cardiff City fans, players, and the Cardiff City chairman, Sam Hammond, were hit by missiles during the match, and hundreds of Cardiff City fans invaded the pitch after the final whistle to celebrate knocking the then leaders of the Premier League out of the FA Cup. Cardiff City was fined £40,000 by the Football Association of Wales for the events that took place that day. Mr Hamann was criticised by the head of English police spotting teams for encouraging the hooligans by saying before the game, "It's better for us to play them at Ninan because the intimidatory factor will be so big. It's a bit like the old den at Millwall, except 10 times more." Mr Hamann at first blamed what he called racist English media for exaggerating the trouble at the Leeds game, but he also launched a war against hooliganism. In October of 2004, a BBC report stated that Cardiff had more fans banned than any other football league club, with 160 banning orders against the fans, showing a willingness to stamp out hooliganism. Despite the club's small size, Wrexham Football Club has had a significant football hooligan element known as the Frontline. It has been involved in major riots with many UK firms, such as those in Chester City, Everton, Port Vale, Shrewsbury and Oldham Athletic. Thank you for joining us today. What are your opinions on hooliganism in football in the UK? We will be doing an in-depth story on each hooligan firm in the UK, so make sure you keep an eye out for when it drops. Do you believe it's not as bad as it used to be? Or do you think that it's getting worse? Please let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more Street Crime UK content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and press the bell so you can join us on the next video. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.